promise to help each other, celebrate the joys of life, and to console each other.
Hello. I am sorry, but I must interrupt this show.
You know what it is? Hey, Ham Solo. It's time, baby. Low. Let's turn how we do. Hey.
They said we said we hit. They said we said we on. They said we said we strong. They said we said we gone. We say that you heard right. 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 They said we said we in. They said we said we on. They said we said strong. They said we said we gone. We say that you heard right. We say that you heard right. We say that you heard right. We say that you
Man, I swear that it's imminent. I've been going so hard on my penmanship. About to go in and buy me a whip. And I pull that shit fresh off the dealership. I can leave you in red like an Xbox. Got me laughing at you like you red fox. Got you chasing Hot Wheels like a matchbox. EA running the game and it don't stop. Super cold like I'm playing for Blizzard. Got you all in my sights like Red Dead Redemption. Never gonna slip on my pimpin'. Better get out my way, bitch, I'm on a mission. Really ain't no competition. I'm steady grilling opposition. I'm get up and ready to win. They can play it how they play, but fuck what you say. I'm getting this money today.
Last of us like a dying breed. Down the ride like a noble steed. Fatality moves, I make you bleed. That's on any game, that's on any screen. Shut up and give me your money. They said we so lit. Even if I take an L, we coming back just to show that we don't quit. They said we said we hit. They said we said we on. They said we said we strong. They said we said.
Oh my goodness. Welcome everybody. It's your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming here with you on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. And today I got a phenomenal guest with me, but I've been trying to get on here for a hot minute. Goodness gracious. This man is hard to get, but I got the brother here. Even I was hollering at Lord Cognito before the show, and we were doing the whole scribes meeting, for lordsgaming.net, and he was like, "You got solved? You got solved? Nobody gets solved. You got that man. That man got time." So even he was surprised that I got you here. But thank you so much for joining me today on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. I bring you guys Mr. Lord Sovereign. How are you doing today, brother? Thank you so much for being here. Once again, I'm gonna say it a million more times.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad that we could finally make it happen. I know I'm kind of difficult to get a hold of. So it's tough, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we could work it out. It only took us meeting each other at PAX East this year to be able to lock it down.
Yeah. Let me recap that moment, right? So it
was more like a
shake hands and whatnot, and bro's like, "Yo, I've had enough of this. Let's go ahead and just get this thing. Let's go ahead and get this thing scheduled."
Yeah.
So we went on ahead. I threw it in the calendar. Had it ready and cooking, good to go.
And to be fair, it was we did it like a month in advance. So yeah, I need like a month lead time to try to finagle my schedule.
Hey, brother, that's how it goes sometimes. I'm just happy that you were able to be here. Good to see you. What's cracking, Yobi, in the chat? Good to see you, brother.
Yobi, what's up, buddy?
Definitely. I usually don't do Behind Them Sticks on Thursday, so I'm sure a lot of people are gonna come through here at some point and be like, "Huh, I'm not used to seeing this brother doing this show on this day."
That's my fault.
It is what it is. I had to accommodate for the brother. I mean, I've been chasing this man down for a hot minute, so I was like, anything, I'll take anything I can get at this point. But I'm happy to have you here, and we got a lot to talk about today. So without any further ado, let's go on ahead and get into it. The first thing that I wanted to go on ahead and get knocked out is I wanted you to let everybody know first and foremost where they can find you. I'll have it posted up on the screen as well, so people can kind of put two and two together.
Awesome. Yeah, well, you guys can find me very rarely, but you'll find me. You can reach me at Lord Sav ILP on X. Formerly known as Twitter. So you can find me there. Obviously, the Iron Lords Podcast YouTube channel, and you can find me there live every Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. with the homies. And anything related to Iron Lords Podcast or lordsofgaming.net, you can probably find me somewhere in and around those spaces.
Yeah, he's always there to read joystick super chats.
That's I need to add that to my job description, specifically that.
I love it. I love it.
Reading sexual innuendo on the Iron Lords podcast. That's
Anytime I hear, let's play with each other's joysticks, I'm like,
I'm like,
oh,
oh,
shit.
man.
This is not going to be good.
This is never gonna be good. Never gonna be good. But,
Oh, man, that man stay harassing.
it's hilarious though, man. Again, a lot of people. It's funny in recent sort of weeks. I don't really read the chat as much, like the YouTube chats. I don't like to necessarily do that because sometimes people just come in. Some people come in to just troll and be nasty. You don't want to start hearing negativity. But again, you also do want to get a temperature of what people are feeling. So some people are like, "Yo, man, I'm tired of this happening." I'm like, "Hey, that's the nature of the show." Like, we made a decision. Like, hey, anybody who supports us and comes in and reads, and gives us money, and they want to read what they have to say. I don't care what you're saying. Like I'm gonna do that honor and read it. So it's hilarious, and obviously people have figured out, okay, we can hijack the show by doing this, right? And it's hilarious to us. The fact that again we can do that, laugh, and then go right back to gaming. It's hilarious. And for guys who started out with 1 or 2 people in the chat, and it's part of the growth process. And I just like the fact that people can come in there and they're happy. We can give them 4 or 5 hours of just laughter. So
Yeah, y'all's podcasts get long.
yeah, they do.
I notice I'm all hyped, texting and saying all kind of stuff in the chat for like the first few hours, and then I burn out, bro.
Yeah,
I ain't got nothing else to say. I'm just gonna lay here and let y'all talk. Bro, what's that? Baron J67 up in the chat. PS,
Aaron, what's up, brother?
mad disrespect always. Good to see you up in here, Berg Brizzle. And of course, I'm gonna shout out brother one more time, Dragonheart Yobi, or the legendary Yobi nowadays.
Shout out to Yobi. Shout out
Guys,
to Decado,
popping
Bird,
through.
Brizzle, PS5 blows. Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. Mad disrespectful, right? Mad disrespectful. I love it though. I love the slander. It's fun. I mean, I come from a college football town, so slander is like second nature.
Right. That's part of the culture. You know what I mean? That's part of the culture. We grew up again the same way. It's like, snapping on each other, and that was part of like the competitive nature
Especially
of
in New York, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen, I was very nerdy, geeky growing up, and you had to learn to defend yourself. So verbally, like, you get really pretty good at snapping because they're gonna snap on you. So you have to be able to come back, and that's how kind of you gain a little bit of your respect. So yeah, snapping is definitely something that was just second nature.
Yeah, Decado over here saying, I love Cog and Attic getting treated like meat now instead of just soft. And their expressions now that it is.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I love yes, exactly. Let's spread the love. Pause. Let's do that. Let's do that. Spread the love.
Why y'all loving on me so much? Come on, love on Cog and Attic.
Yeah, Cog, especially King. King loves that.
Yeah, King is Mr. Slander. He loves. He wants all the smoke.
Yeah, except for that smoke. He's not about that smoke. That's when he turns his camera off and the mic gets turned on.
So you know all the backstories and whatnot. That's great. That's
King is the one that really brought that to that dynamic to the group, because King was always that dude that he's just talking and talking and talking. So you have to figure out how to hang with him, because otherwise he's gonna eat you alive when it comes to snapping. So imagine him snapping on you and beating you in the game. You're distracted, you get nervous, and then all of a sudden he's up 10-0 in a fighting game on you or something like that. That was what would happen.
That's how that talking works.
Yeah, so that's that's the sort of sharpening steel. Like you had to really learn how to focus.
It's that Reggie Miller head game.
Yeah, man. Yeah, somebody always in your ear, and that's how we grew up, man. That's how we grew up. So it was fun times.
Sav over here playing Mark Jackson, getting all up in Reggie's ear. Go ahead. He talk. You hear him talking about you like that? Go ahead and get him.
And that's what it is, right? Because initially you don't have the person that's doing it back to him, and all of a sudden you get a little bit of confidence and you do it back to him, and you do it back to him. So you back and forth with him. Now he doesn't have that on you anymore. Now it's just about the skills in the game, right, and focusing on the game. So I mean, again, that's the dynamic that we had growing up, pretty much in every game that we played, because everything was competitive. Like there was some days that we'd be up, and we'd be watching somebody play Resident Evil or something like that, and nobody else really playing. But then for the most part, it was something competitive, whether it was Halo, whether it was, wrestling, whether it was, Tekken, Street Fighter, whatever the case may be. It's usually something competitive.
Yeah, I got a few other people I wanted to shout out, and a question that actually came out from the chat. So first of all, I wanted to shout out Mahmood, the scribe lord himself is here,
Yes.
showing a little love and respect. Thank you
What
so
up,
much
brother?
for pulling up, brother. He knows I'm actually a little under the weather, but I'm just trying to fool y'all right now. Trying to fool y'all. But your boy was hanging out with with my daughter, and she had a fever. So you know how that stuff moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now your boy's a little hotter than he should be in this room.
Yeah.
But
I hear
but
you.
anyways,
I'm in a warm room myself right now.
keep it hot.
Yeah.
All right. Legendary Yobi does have a question for you. He said, "Ask Sov, did any shady people come at you at PAX? Nobody's sneaky like joysticks popped up on you talking about Sovereign, my man."
Nah, that didn't go down. And if somebody saw who was standing around me, they were gonna go left anyway. So no, that did not go down. We have a theory that Joystick and a few of the other unseemly characters in the chat are one and the same, but who knows? We don't know that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like somebody just logging on real quick.
Yeah, and just but again, showing love in their own way is hilarious because it takes the conversation left. But now PAX was cool, man. PAX, anybody that came up just came up to show love. It's always it's eye-opening and humbling when somebody recognizes you as, oh my God, the Iron Lords or whatever. Like it's kind of crazy. Anytime that happens. So it was cool though. PAX was a good time. It was. I know you were there, and you kind of got to see the dynamic of us. Kind of when we get there, it's go time and it's work, and it's like.
And there is parts where I was moving too fast, and there is parts where I couldn't keep up. Like it's a weird balance out there.
It is. You have to go. You got to go do your thing, rock out. Then you have to stop and chill for a little bit. Obviously, you want to upload content that you've gotten or whatever, and write if you're going to write or whatever the case may be. But you have to take those breaks because sometimes you're down on that show floor, 3-4 hours at a time, and you don't realize it. You come back, the voice is gone, and it's like, it's a balancing act, man. But it'll
go from being 9 a.m. and then all of a sudden it's 2.
Yep, and you're like, where'd the time go?
Where'd the time go?
Where'd my voice go?
Yeah, shout out to Mahmood saying hit the like button, folks. Show some support. Yeah, absolutely. Whatchamacallit, Jacob Novak in the chat says, "Hi, Ham and Sov. How are you two? Question to both. Early predictions for E3." So he's saying like Summer Game Pass. But he says only 3 each, not COD, not COD or Gear 6. So I guess he's saying pick 3 games that you think are going to be shown.
Well, so you mean Summer Game Fest because E3 is gone with the dodo bird, but yeah, I mean, I'm thinking on the Xbox side, I think we do see actual Fable gameplay. Maybe that'd be nice to see, but I also do think on the Xbox side, it's time to give first looks at maybe something like a State of Decay that's been out there for a minute. So obviously we got the initial sort of trailer for South of Midnight. Maybe we get more of that. And maybe we get a hint of what's coming at the end of the year. Obviously we have Indiana Jones. Maybe there's another surprise or two, for later on in the year on the Xbox side. On the PlayStation side, I think, if they go with the thinking that, hey, it's time to start showing stuff that's a little further out. I don't know. Maybe we see, a little teaser of the next Horizon, if a little teaser, if they are doing a sort of Last of Us Part 3. And if not, then what's the next thing Naughty Dog is working on before they go to that. So on the PlayStation side is interesting because they haven't said a lot recently. So obviously we're going to hear more about their service games and things of that nature. So, and on Nintendo side, I don't really know what they're going to do because I kind of have a feeling they're going to talk about the new console late in the year, right? I think more
Okay.
fall is when they're going to talk about it, unless they surprise and they kind of give an initial announcement of it now, and then do something more in depth later on. Giving us kind of a release, a release window and things of that nature, and kind of what we can expect from it. So I'm kind of up in the air about what they may be doing. But either way, it's interesting times, obviously, and also on the PlayStation side, we're probably going to see a professional version of the PlayStation 5
Professional, this man.
at the end of the year.
Got his
So
pinky out.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they market that, right? So
Okay.
that's kind of my prediction. I don't know, game wise, we're in an interesting time because you don't have lulls in gaming anymore, right? So it's to say like, oh, the summertime is when you announce all the hot stuff that's coming out in the fall isn't necessarily how it works anymore. So it's gonna be interesting.
Fair enough. I guess I might as well go for myself. So let's see, for the Xbox event, I'm with Solve on the idea of seeing more Fable gameplay.
Mhm.
I think something like that. I'm gonna put 2 in 1 right here, and I'm gonna say I'm thinking either like a State of Decay or Perfect Dark
Mhm.
showing. And third, I would say man, let me think. I know what I'm not gonna say is Exo Mecha, because that game is a mess. Let's see, another thing for Xbox. Maybe like I'm guessing like Shattered Space for Starfield
Mhm.
will actually
Yeah.
like be dropped that
Oh, you think
day,
it's a shadow
possibly.
drop? You think it's a
I'm
shadow
thinking
drop? Okay.
there might be a shadow drop of that, just to keep all eyes on Xbox right now. I mean, all eyes are currently kind of on Xbox due to that Fallout show
Yeah.
right now. So, but as for PlayStation, I'm gonna say Venom.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a Venom showing, seeing that we got those leaks and whatnot, and seeing that Venom was supposed to be coming out before Wolverine, supposedly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they have a release date for something like Fair Games.
Yeah.
Then also, um, I mean, I'm thinking Last of Us Part 3 possibly or whatnot, but I'm also kind of wondering how they're going to implement the PlayStation VR headset to PC. I want them to talk about that.
I really would like them to have like set aside a section to talk about that stuff because they've done a piss poor job of marketing that machine. It's like they put it out there to die, and not to say that there aren't games on it, because if you have not played a lot of these games on other VR platforms, there's plenty to play. So you can't say there's
Right.
plenty not plenty to play, but they haven't done a good job of really going out there and making you feel like you need to get this, particularly from a first party standpoint. They don't really have much in that vein. So
For a
even though
device
again,
that costs more than the console itself, it's wild how little they've done with it.
it really is, it really is. So I really do hope that they give it that respect and try to salvage, especially again, if you're adding sort of PC compatibility, which is something that they've never done with any one of their peripherals, slash portable consoles, whatever. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And the headset is a high quality headset. Obviously, it's still tethered, but it is a high quality headset that, if you have it already, is a great option to get into PC gaming. And obviously, the PC platform, when it comes to VR, they have just a bunch of wild stuff there. And obviously, what I consider to be the pinnacle of VR is Half-Life Alyx, right? In terms of having a AAA sort of gaming product that that kind of in the vein of what we're used to. So it'd be great for somebody with a PSVR 2 to be able to access that. So yeah, we'll see if they do it. I agree with you 100%. I think they really need to, give it some shine, because they have not done a good job of that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. As for Nintendo, I mean, I'm also kind of with you with that, because I just don't know what they're gonna
Yeah.
do, especially seeing that my interest level in Nintendo right now is very low.
Mhm.
Seeing that, I felt like Tears of the Kingdom was kind of the crescendo
Mhm.
of the Nintendo Switch. So I'm more or less waiting to hear them say something about the new console. But as you said, that could be coming like later this year that might not even get mentioned. But one thing that I do hope to hear them talk about with, with Nintendo Switch being, having the sequel possibly come out, is I hope they talk about internet integration with their dang devices. Because
Moving into the 21st century.
right, because it's just like, to me, it's wild that like you have to go through so much just to be in a party chat with someone.
Yeah.
You have to get these social security type numbers just to link up with your friends and play with them. I feel like there's no real synergy when it comes to online gaming.
Yeah, I think they kind of realized my hope, right? My hope is with the Nintendo Switch Online that is sort of the basis for everything they do with online moving forward, especially when it comes to like, hey, just give me these older games in the service and I'll pay you whatever it is monthly or yearly to have access to them. Don't nickel and dime me and charge me, whatever, $5 every time you have a new platform and you want me to rebuy it from you or whatever. And that was the case, with the eShop and what the heck was their other, I forget what it's called there, where they had the older games on past platforms. So yeah, I kind of hope that that's the case with them. But we'll see, because Nintendo, King and I said this a million times. It makes the most sense, obviously, to have a direct successor to the Switch and do exactly what the Switch did, just better, to see that same level of success. But Nintendo don't necessarily, they're toy makers, they're tinkerers. They like the idea of bringing, figuring out some new way of interacting with games, and a lot of times it comes off as gimmicky. And usually does not last the duration of the generation. But, it's almost like they can't help themselves. So we'll see.
Well, I think what a lot of people forget about Nintendo is they like a lot of people try to compare them with like Xbox or Sony in specific ways, and they forget that Microsoft and Sony are companies that depend on much more than just gaming.
Yeah.
Right? As to where Nintendo is just like, that's all we do.
It's what we are, yeah.
So they don't sure, they have a Mario movie, but they don't rely on Mario. They don't rely on TV shows or anything like that. Those are an added bonus to them, as to where, if Microsoft or Sony misses on a studio, they get hit twice.
Yeah, 100%. I think Nintendo are realizing. I think the most telling thing with Nintendo is that they are sort of loosening those grips and letting maybe the younger guys that are in tow over there kind of take the reins of some of this stuff, because you see the difference in thinking when you think about, the theme park, the movies, right? You still have Miyamoto kind of at the helm of that and making sure that that the essence of Nintendo isn't lost.
Sure.
But it does kind of feel like the work on the ground is being done by younger people and some of their influences are being seen. So back to the point of like, hey, let's bring the internet stuff up to speed. My hope is that influence carries through into the new platform and we see more of that, and they aren't so closed off. And I don't even care about them being closed off. Just make it accessible in a way that feels modern within your ecosystem, and then we can talk about, playing nice with with the other people in the space, but just make it feel modern for your game players. But we'll see. But I do sort of think that the young kids are having a little bit more of an influence, and hopefully that bodes well for them moving forward. Because at some point, I kind of do think that even the young kids that are real big Nintendo heads now, once they start seeing that doesn't evolve, and as they get older, they're going to start being interested in what they, more mature gaming, right? So they'll want a PC, they'll want an Xbox, they'll want a PlayStation. If they don't figure a way to continue, keeping up, then you're going to have people moving away from the platform. And obviously you always have new young kids coming in and being enamored by Nintendo, but still they do have to figure out how they move forward without, alienating people, because then gamers are getting smarter and smarter, right? So it's one of those things where, what do you mean I can't do this on this platform? What do you mean I can't access this on this platform? Well, I'm going to go someplace else, so right. They got to start thinking about that. But
No doubt. I mean,
or not.
especially right. But I'm thinking more or less like they definitely need to tap into being better, involved with like online and stuff like that, especially with, Fortnite is a big deal for a
Yeah.
lot of, kids and whatnot. And I mean, I think having that seamless ability to be
Oh
able
yeah.
to connect and, talk to your friends without having to use a second device, like a third party device to be able to
Hmm.
do it, go to Discord or something else, would really kind of change the game for
Yeah.
Nintendo. And I think they'd be able to sell more products, first
Hmm.
party wise, like headphones and stuff like that to go with their product to
Absolutely.
kind of, make more profits out of everything when it's all said
Yeah.
and done.
And even
Um,
then, and even
yeah,
then, my nephew plays Fortnite almost exclusively on his Switch, and that isn't the most ideal way to play it. But you have a lot of kids that's where they play it, right? So, at the very least, they have their foot in the door with that. But you're right. I mean, if they made it more of a seamless experience on their platform, where you would feel like you're investing well to like get a whole bunch of peripherals and stuff that that allow you to interact with their platform and their ecosystem in a more just a smoother way, I think would help immensely. But we'll see if they think the same.
I know they can do it. They were selling folks cardboard. Y'all can do this.
Yes, yeah, they can.
but, but anyway, shout out to legendary Yobi up in the chat. He said, I still remember that episode, Ham, when you were on ILP, which that was phenomenal. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed that experience. I hope to be back on sometime in the future. But he says,
absolutely.
and they were going at it, and Joy6 told Strange Love, I'll spread your cheeks. I was
This
dying, is
is
what Yobi was saying.
this is
Oh,
this is
wow.
their love language. This is how they.
That's the
these,
first time I said that on my show.
these are their terms of endearment for themselves. Wow, you see, yeah, there's oftentimes arguing in amongst the people in the chat about who loves who more. So this is where we're at. This is
Wow.
where we're at.
Wow, you got a lot of love over there, Sav. I tell you.
Oh, they were arguing amongst themselves. They weren't talking about my cheeks though. They're talking about the
He's like, I gotta throw that out there right now.
yeah. Just to be clear, clarify that.
Jacob Novak in the chat says Ham looks like David Bautista with his orange yellow glasses, and that's a compliment because he looks amazing. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much. I got these like a few weeks before going out to PAX, and I just like the way they look, so I've been wearing them. I got my shades in the day, so.
Yeah, I almost didn't recognize you, man. I was like, oh, damn, the hair. You got the haircut.
Yeah, the hair and the shade just looking completely different. Ain't looking like I just came out of my mama's basement, right? Yeah, I had to change up the look just a little bit. I wanted to walk up to the devs feeling fresh and not feeling like I just woke up off the couch. So like I had to change a little something.
I hear that.
All right, but I could go on with these chats over and over, but let's go on ahead and get into today's show. I do have some things I want you to kind of gloss over because earlier, right at the beginning of the show, you were talking about, like kind of nerd culture back in the day in New York and how it was and sticking up for yourself and, having, your things that you liked, but it didn't always bode well with everybody else. I want you to tell me what it was like kind of growing up as yourself, within school and everything else like that when it pertains to gaming. What was that like?
So when it pertains to gaming, so I was born in 1976. I'm an old guy. So growing up, I had access. I didn't own, right? We didn't own all these consoles or whatever, but I had access to things like obviously the original Pong machine, Magnavox Odyssey, what is it, the Fairchild something or other, what else, Intellivision, ColecoVision, arcades, right? You go to arcades and you see something like a Pac-Man or you see something like a real old school game. So I had access to games throughout. The Atari 20 and also the Atari and Commodore, so the Commodore 64, Atari 400, Atari 600. In some way, shape, or form, I always had access to these different platforms. By the time I got to school, though, the big thing where it really blew up, even before Atari, right? A lot of kids had Atari, and we had Atari 2600 in the house. but that was something that was kind of kept locally to my house. I don't remember having friends over to play Atari, anything like that. I would play Atari with my next door neighbor sometimes, but that was about it. You know, it really blew up school wise when it came to Super Nintendo. I'm not sorry, not Super Nintendo, the NES. Um, and that's when, you know, again, NES, Sega Master System. I was a Master System kid. I was a Sega kid. I've said this story a million times, but um, wound up getting an NES later. But you know, when it came time for me to get a console, my dad, you know, by that time I was like, it was like 8. So you know, I already knew the secret about, you know, old Saint Nick. I already knew the secret was out. So my dad was like, "All right, let's go and pick out what you want for Christmas." And we went, and there was an NES there, and there was a Sega Master System. Um, Now, Cog and I were really big into Double Dragon. Um,
Oh,
and
time out. Time.
yeah, so
You
wait,
knew Cog way back then.
I've known Cog. We were in 2nd grade together.
Oh.
No, as a matter of fact, we were in kindergarten together. Then I went to a different school. Then I came back to the same school. So definitely from kindergarten, there were some gaps, and then we, you know, came back to school together. Yeah. So I've known I've known Cog since the cradle, essentially.
How about King? Did you know him that long?
No, I met King. I went away for school for high school, and I remember coming back for during the summer, and that's the first time I met King. So I met King like yeah, like probably like 14 years old is when I first met King,
Oh wow.
and he was
That's still a
already
lot of history.
yeah, he was already, you know, part of the group. It was funny because I always say, like, when I first met him, I'm like, he's, you know, he's bigger than us, he looks older than us. I'm like, this guy's hanging out with this old dude. What's going on, right? And then he likes to talk a lot of smack. And I remember that King and I really we gelled over Street Fighter, like because he and I were still really into, you know, Street Fighter and things like that. So I just remember us having like battles back and forth, and that's how we got tight, because we got a respect for each other, because we would, most of the time we were damn near tied when it came to things like Street Fighter. So yeah, that's how I met King. And so yeah, in schooling, the first thing that we really kind of got into in terms of school culture mixing with gaming culture was definitely NES Master System. And the Master System kids had it hard, man, because you know, the Master System was more powerful than the NES, but it was considerably less popular.
Right.
So as a Sega kid, you know, you'd be talking about things like, you know, Ken Saden and Rambo First Blood Part 2, and then you know, Alex Kidd, and then, you know, your friends are talking about Mario and Metroid and Zelda. You know, it was, the conversations got difficult. And that's the first time you kind of see a little bit of the console warring, although a lot of it just came from, it was a little bit of jealousy. Like, I don't have access to this. I want to play this, but I don't have access to this. So I'm a young kid. I'm going to hate on it until I could get it. But I just really want to have it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So a lot of it stemmed from that. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm hating on this platform, I don't want to have anything to do with it. As a kid, you wanted to play everything. You just, you know, for a lot of us, that was not the case. So that
Okay.
was really, yeah, that was really it for us. And so going back to the Double Dragon, story, which I don't think I was 8. I was more like 10 or 11 when it happened. Yeah, so the decision was a Master System or an NES, and my dad took me to Sears. And then so there was just
Rest in
there
peace.
was, yeah, I know, rest in peace. So and what sealed the deal was that, hey, if you buy the Master System, you get a voucher to get Double Dragon, the arcade version, right? Because at the time, the version of Double Dragon that was out on the NES was a single player game. It wasn't the same as the arcade version at all. You know, people liked it and enjoyed it, but it was not the arcade. And the Master System version was going to be true to the arcade, which was huge. So I said, "Oh, I guess I'm a Sega kid," and I got the Master System. And it's funny because Cog already had the Master System as well. He was a Sega kid, you know, so it just fit perfectly. Yeah, and I remember getting that Double Dragon months later. I thought, oh, they got me. They're not sending me a Double Dragon. I got Double Dragon in the mail months before it was out on retail. So I had it in my house. Nobody believed me. I remember bringing the case to school and Cog going crazy, and Cog asking my mom to borrow it because he didn't ask me permission. Cog could play during the week. I was not allowed to play video games during the week, only Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Cog, he comes over to the house and he asked my mom, "Hey, can I borrow this for the week?" And I'm like, "Damn you!"
Took advantage.
Took advantage, yeah. But yeah, definitely, I grew up a Sega kid, and definitely, once we got NES and stuff like that, I loved all of that stuff as well. But the heart, the first love was Sega.
Oh man, I love it. I love to hear it because that's what I was as well. I was a Sega kid growing up, and that was my joint road. But like I wasn't Master System. I wasn't until Genesis.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
a little younger than y'all. So
yeah.
So I was Genesis. That was like, I mean, NES, sure. Super NES, absolutely. But in my household, it was a Sega household, and I was a Genesis man through and through. Yeah. We were a sports family as well, so Genesis was a big deal.
Was a big deal, yeah. More so than the SNES, for sure.
Big time. And then on top of that, I loved my like adult kind of games, so like Road Rash and like Greatest Heavyweight Boxing, when they used to call people suckers and sissies while they're fighting and stuff like that. I used to love that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Toe Jam and Earl, all that, all that.
The bloody version of Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, none of that weird green stuff or whatever.
The green sweat.
Yeah, man. But yeah. So obviously the Sega was a big piece of your startup. You already had friends and stuff like that played on other consoles, so you got a little taste of that. I'm sure you got to play a little bit of like not Commodore. I'm thinking of what was that other system?
The Commodore 64.
TurboGrafx is what
TurboGrafx, yeah, definitely TurboGrafx. We had that actually. TurboGrafx we had when I was away at school. My roommate and still to this day one of my best friends. He had it, and we got to see playing Legendary Axe and Keith Courage and actually King and Cog had it. I believe it might have just been King's machine that we brought over to Cog's house, but we had a lot of fun playing like what's it called, Dungeon something, where you had like the 4-player multi-tap. You had a like racing game. It was like a gauntlet type game, but it was called Dungeon Master. Let me see, I don't remember the exact name. But we played TurboGrafx 16 was another one that was like, damn, like you see it. They had a lot of great games like Bonk and stuff like that. It felt somewhat more powerful than a Genesis, right? But it kind of up in that space between Genesis and SNES. And but it was one of those things like if you didn't have the money to get it, well, you were gonna pick one of the more well-known consoles. But yeah, definitely had access to that and played a whole bunch of that stuff. So I was just lucky.
Expensive. Talk about the Neo Geo.
Yeah, so Neo Geo, it was funny. King was the only one that had it because King was
big
older.
Old cartridges.
Yeah, big old cartridges. And what King would do, King worked at one of the we always talk about Mr. Lee, right? And Mr. Lee was this this video game import store, right? That had he had all the American games as well, but they specialized in importing stuff early. Because back then things weren't launching day and date in all regions. More often than not, and things would launch in Japan first, and the US would get it like a year later, 6 months to a year later. So I mean, when it came to that, King worked in those stores, and oftentimes he would just say, "Don't pay me in games, pay me in product." So he would go and like he'd get everything. So yeah, he got the Neo Geo when it initially launched. So he got the Japanese version and was able to get these cartridges. The console itself was like $700-800. The cartridges were upwards of $200 each. But that was the arcade. It was the same thing you were playing in the arcade. So King had access to that. We were able to play that. And then Cog and I, when we didn't have King around, we would go to a store called The Wiz. Nobody Beats The Wiz, right? And that was like a music store, radio. It was kind of a Best Buy of that time, where it was like you had televisions, you had stereos. I don't think you had other appliances there. And it was a music store as well. Like you get your cassette tapes and things like that, and your vinyls. And they had Neo Geo there, and it was a demo unit. And we would always go in and we would we'd play Magician Lord and Nam 75, and we'd play Metal Slug. And we'd stay there as long as they would let us be in there, we'd play Baseball Stars, right? We're big baseball heads, so we were playing Baseball Stars, and until they'd kick us out of the store, and they're like, "Are you gonna buy this?" No, then go home.
Back next.
Yeah, so that was Neo Geo was special, man, because again, you only saw that stuff in the arcades, and to have it at home exactly the first, the way that it was in the arcade was something like eye-opening to see. So yeah, shout out to King for providing that experience.
Okay. So obviously that was a big time in gaming, especially being able to play with your homeboys, being able to go to arcades, all the different cartridge systems back then. But now we're moving into a different type of section in gaming.
Yeah.
Moving into CD-ROMs and stuff like that. So I want you to tell me, what was the first console that really kind of knocked you back with CD-ROM based games?
Well, the first thing really was the Sega CD. Because even though it wasn't really doing much in terms of improving, the look of games that were essentially just Genesis games. But the sound you were getting, the amount of storage that these games now had, allowing you to have like full-on soundtracks, orchestral quality soundtracks, some additional voice acting in some cases and things of that nature. Obviously, early FMV, even though it was in these very small letterbox and stuff like that. So that was just, even though it was kind of the tip of the iceberg and very simplistic still, it gave you an idea of what was to come. And so then moving forward from that, obviously the 3DO was impressive from a technological standpoint early on. And then obviously for me, the Sega kid, I was a big Sega Saturn kid. So, King and I were really the only ones that really, supported it in the group. Everyone moved on to the big one, which is the PlayStation, right? The PlayStation, you go to the PlayStation and you start seeing games that look arcade quality for a machine that was considerably more affordable than, what a Neo Geo was back in the day or whatever. You're like, okay, they're finally getting there where the home experience is looking to overtake the arcade experience. And that wasn't super impressive. And again, hearing, the CD quality music and orchestral sort of like, soundtracks and things of that nature in these games, it was something special. And I think that feeling really, really culminated in the first time you really got to see Final Fantasy VII, where it was like, oh, okay, I get it. This entire product is, very cinematic in a way that we really have not seen in games up until this point. It got everything, it kind of has the whole package. And it was perfect to sort of wow people into saying, okay, this is what games have become now. This is what they can be. So, FF7's never been my favorite Final Fantasy, but I recognize how important that moment was. And a lot of it had to do with the presentation of it. So yeah, they were precursors in terms of CD technology that showed us, even the Philips CDI, right, showed you kind of a little bit of it, even though that didn't do much at all. Shout out to those Zelda and Mario games. But yeah, yeah. But yeah, there was I was fortunate to be able to see that progression and to be able to see every step of it along the way and be like, hey, because a lot of people would be like, oh, it was the PlayStation, it was this. And yes, it most definitely was. And in a lot of cases, it was the platform that brought those sensibilities to the masses. But there was stuff that came before that showed you kind of where it was going. And I was fortunate enough to be able to experience all of it. So I've always felt fortunate in that because I understand the entire sort of hierarchy of it and how it got to where it is. So
no doubt. So now we kind of move from, the mixture of cartridge and CD based games. And then now we're just like in CD games at this point, right?
Apart from the N64. Yeah.
64 was a phenomenal That was a phenomenal system. The original PlayStation, but you had a bunch of other like sneaky little consoles, CD-based consoles around that time too. So the
Mhm.
3DO, the Atari Jaguar, yada yada,
Yeah, Jaguar.
uh,
Mhm.
were around as well. 3DO was extra weird because they kind of did what I'm personally thinking Microsoft might be doing here in the near future, which is
Mhm.
licensing out their name and allowing other manufacturers to make things and they call it their console, right?
It
So
could be.
3DO had like the one I have is the Gold Star
Oh, so
3DO.
you have the Gold Star 3DO.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep.
cool.
They had the Panasonic 3DO. I believe they had like a
Mhm.
Magnavox
Yes.
3DO
Yes.
even as well. Um, so there was that. What's cracking? Nate Martin up in the chat. Appreciate you stopping through on Twitter. Got about 61 people watching.
Shout out
A
to you
little
guys.
mixture between Twitter and YouTube. So I appreciate everybody for stopping through. Share it out. Let everybody know that we're live. Hit that like button if you can. Yeah, like I said, we're moving on to strictly CD based consoles, and I like to call this generation like the big 3+1
Mhm.
because the big three ended up being Microsoft, Nintendo, and PlayStation. The +1 was Dreamcast
It
because
was
it
it
kind of
was
fell off,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. That
Uh,
was the swan song.
I want you to kind of talk about that generation in particular because I feel like that generation really kind of set off the direction in gaming as we are now today.
Well, I think what I've come to realize over the years is that in the climate, once you had a PlayStation come into the fold, once you had an Xbox and a Microsoft come into the fold, the landscape changed completely because now these were companies that had, money to invest that Sega never did, right? Nintendo Nintendo also survived by the fact that they kind of remained very strict about, what it was they were doing, not trying to do too much outside of their realm of expertise. And they
Right.
managed to, also leverage the strength of their IP to continue to be successful. With Sega, there was a whole lot of infighting at Sega between, the
America and
hierarchy of
Japan.
the America and Japan. Like Japan ran the show, and oftentimes America had it right in terms of what they needed to do to make the brand more global. The problem was that Japan did not want to do that. So rather than just shut them down completely, they would develop things independent of one another, and there would be different ideologies on both sides of the pond. And ultimately, rather than just say, no, this isn't happening, they'd allow something to happen and then find a way to kill it. And when you have that type of infighting in a company, it's never good, right? But I think ultimately, once you had PlayStation and Microsoft in the fold, it money wise, there was no way Sega could compete. So I think in some way, shape, or form, no matter what, Sega would have found their way out of the console business. I think it was just inevitable because of the big players that were in there now. I mean, when PlayStation came into the fold, they literally they were purchasing studios to shut them down in order for Sega not to be able to get games from them. That's the kind of money that's the kind of dynamic they brought to the space that did not exist before then. So it was tough for them. So that you add to that the infighting and stuff like that, and it was going to be difficult for them to survive in this climate now. But the Dreamcast was special. The Dreamcast was special because on the one hand, it really gave you finally that arcade-like experience where you're looking at these games at home. You're like, wow, this is the same as the arcade or better than the arcade in the case of something like a Soul Calibur or something like that. And they took those arcade experiences and transplanted them to the home in a way that started to make sense, where it's like, hey, when you play a game in the arcade, the point of the arcade is to take as much of your money as possible, right? And make it as frustrating as possible. That's just part of the loop. At home, you had to figure out how to make the game fun for the person at home, but also be able want them to come back and play more and more and more, right? But the idea of extracting money from them was no longer part of the equation. You had to figure that out, and they did that amazingly. Like the Dreamcast was for its time an amazing half step that needed to happen because of the failure of the Saturn, right? The Saturn failed, so they absolutely had to figure out a way to get back into the space sooner than they would have liked. And so what happened then is that the Dreamcast came out, was amazing for a short amount of time, but the PlayStation 2 was on the horizon already. So people that fell in love with the PlayStation were like, I'm just going to wait for the PlayStation 2. And that's kind of what happened. So you have this amazing console in this middle space where it was just never able to survive and thrive. Then you add to that the fact that it was probably the easiest console in history to bootleg for, where you didn't even need a boot disc, you didn't need anything. And you know, a year into its life, or less than a year into its life, you know, living in New York, there were a lot of little pop-up stores in Chinatown and stuff that we would go to. There were stores dedicated to selling copied Dreamcast games. Like it wasn't out in the open, I would say, but you knew where they were, and it was literally like anything you could get. And it was something that, you know, when it comes to doing stuff like that and pirating stuff, that stuff was always more relegated to the people in the know, right? The technically savvy people who know how to mess with the consoles, whatever. Now all of a sudden it was something that was available to the average person that had no idea what they were doing, because it literally just booted up like a regular game. And you know, that also added to the quick demise of the Dreamcast. So it was fun to see, because although it was the swan song, it was one of their best efforts. Everything about that console, you know, when it came was forward thinking when it came to, you know, the internet connectivity, things of that nature, trying to figure out how to do, you know, more competitive local gaming with the VMU, and sort of, you know, people playing football and have your plays on the little screen on the controller in the VMU, things of that nature. It was a very powerful and forward-thinking console for its time.
It was incredible.
It was absolutely incredible.
The only thing is missing is the second stick.
Yeah, exactly. When it came to controller support, right? It was just you know, kind of and it was a little backwards in that when you start looking at the, you know, the DualShock and things of that nature that the PlayStation was doing. You know, they still had sort of their own thinking about, you know, what a home joystick should be, and they were a little behind in that, but it was cool. And I think you remember, well, this was on the Saturn, but you know, obviously the analog stuff that they introduced in Knights and things of that nature, which Nintendo also did with, you know, Super Mario 64. They were innovators in the space.
Brought up this game right here. Let's
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Nights in the Dreams.
Nights in the Dreams, man. Nights in the
Great
Dreams. Yeah, so it was an awesome time for a very short amount of time, and then it all went up in flames, you know. But I enjoyed it while I was there. Had some great games. Obviously at launch, one of the great launch lineups of all time, kind of, you know, led by Soul Calibur, which was, you know, when you compared it to the arcade version, was just head and shoulders above what the arcade was. So it was, if you're a Sega fan, that was a special year and a half. And then, you know, the PlayStation 2 came out, and I always feel like the moment people saw that Metal Gear Solid 2 demo and saw kind of what PlayStation 2 was bringing to the table, a lot of people just said, I'm not bothering with the Dreamcast. I'm just not. And, you know, that obviously expedited their exit from the space. But, you know, everything, it's just fun to be part of that history, right? To be there, right, and to know what you know, what the temperature was and what people were feeling, and to see it all kind of come full circle, right? To see them having success now in third party, Sonic being a big deal, Persona being a big deal, you know, Yakuza being a big deal. Like it's good to see. So, you know, it would have been super heartbreaking if Sega just went away completely. So
yeah, I wonder if anybody would have believed you if you would have told them, like back in the day, hey, Persona is going to overtake Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would have believed you back then.
Not at all. It's just, hey, that's why it's very cool just to be on along for the ride, right? And to see how these sensibilities change and things like that. Like it's very, very fun to see because you in the moment, me growing up in the moment, like you have your favorites, you have your emotions tied to what, the stuff that you love the most. But as I've gotten older, I just like to be an observer, right? And to kind of see what happens. I don't really have a horse in the game anymore. I'm gonna play wherever, wherever there are games, I'm gonna play. I'm not really worried about, the platform and things of that nature, as long as I have access to all of them in some way, shape, or form. So it's fun because I look at it as more of an observer and try to sort of see where things are going. And that's been a little harder lately to kind of see because again, changes in the market, changes in technology and things of that nature, changes in the sort of the likes and dislikes of the modern gamer. The landscape is different than I would have predicted it to be, 10 years ago.
My goodness. What are you doing to my channel, dog?
See, this is the Prolific ain't need to go there.
Prolific with
He
a
did not need to
$5
go.
super chat saying, "What up, fellas? Soft, I'm still waiting for you to pound me with your thick, mighty king." What is happening here? So,
This is a Tekken reference.
I know. And I had
For
a
those of you
chance
who
to-
don't know,
yeah, I had a chance to, fight in the same tournament with Prolific last week with Cog. He hosted
Yeah.
a little meet and beat 'em up
Yeah.
last Saturday, and Prolific was there
There's
throwing
no
hands.
good way to say that. Yeah, I hear you.
That's wild. What you guys say about that?
Yeah. Maybe, hopefully this week. I don't know about Thick and Mighty King, but yeah, perhaps we'll be able to fight one another in the arena of Tekken 8. We'll see.
He's mad appropriate with that response. I love it. I love it, man. This man changing my channel. This is wild.
Yeah, this is what happens. This is the before the Iron Lord effect was. Oh, your podcast is going to be 8 hours long. Now it's this. Now it's gutter talk.
Gutter talk. Oh man, I love it. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not very many places where people would be comfortable saying that kind of stuff.
And that's why again, some people come in, go into the chats and start. I'm tired. It's all like 99.9% of what we say is just jokes. It's absolutely jokes. And then when we talk about the topics or whatever that we actually giving our real takes. Like even a lot of people will be like, "Oh, it's all King and his crazy takes and him just hating." And I'm like, he'll give you that. And then if you stop and listen, he'll give you what he really feels like in real context, right? And some people just hear that and leave, or all they care to do is hear that and comment upon that, and they don't listen to the rest of the show where we sit down and have thorough discussion about these topics. So it's just funny, man. It's again, you have to go into our show knowing that hopefully our goal is to make you laugh. And then at the same time, give you what our takes on what these, these current topics in gaming are. But,
yeah, unfortunately, sometimes people only hear what makes them frustrated.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. I'm like, I understand, like, the tough part of making content and stuff like that is that you always want to make something that you're happy with, right? And that makes you proud and makes you laugh. But at the same time, people are going to come in and extract from it what they want from it, right? And sometimes you want it to be just what you want it to be, and all the other stuff you don't want. Which is why you see people, oh, where are the timestamps? I want to listen to this specifically and nothing else. And I get it, but I think, I don't know. For me, it's okay to love something and not love every aspect of it, right? And to put yourself in a situation where you're listening to stuff that maybe you're not 100% on board with, whatever, but sometimes that's what it takes to open your mind to something, right? And that's just kind of how I view everything. I think I've stopped thinking about things as, oh, I love this, I hate this, I don't want to engage with this. I engage with everything. and I find that I learn new things about myself, about tolerance levels for whatever, like different types of comedy, or just learning about new topics and stuff like that that I would never engage with otherwise, and all of a sudden somebody else's conversation has made me interested. So it's tough. It's a little bit tough, but I think it's allowed me to grow a lot as a person, and just as someone who consumes content, and be like, okay, it opens, because a lot of times, like, content creation is hard because you have to find your audience, right? And the audience is going to glean and extract what they want from your content. And if
Right.
it's and if they don't feel it's worth their time to glean the specific thing that they want from it, they're going to go someplace else, and that's just the nature of it. But we've been lucky. We've been lucky that people gravitate to our type of comedy. The fact that we're always laughing, so that's kind of infectious to people. And for some people, it's just about being in an environment like that, where it's like, okay, these guys are having fun. Whatever may be going on in my life or whatever, I can put that to the side and just laugh with these guys. And
Absolutely.
it's been fun to be able to provide that for people.
No doubt. That's a special thing to be able to hold on and lock onto and be able to replicate week by week, because it's not easy. I mean, I've had my moments where I have a big show and a lot of people there, and then it's like, how am I gonna manifest that and make that like be able to repeat that
We
process?
read that
And it's
every single week.
not as
Yeah.
easy as you think it is,
It's not, especially
especially when
your
topics are different every week.
topics are different, people's energies are different. Like you can control you, right? But it depends on who comes on. If the energy's not there, then it's going to be a different tone, and you got to figure out how to navigate that. With us, the good thing is that our energies we know each other so well that the energy's always the same. And even if there's some days where some of us aren't there, or the energy is different, somebody's under the weather or whatever, we just try to figure it out, right? And you move on from it. And some days the comedy is what kind of stands out, right? And the comedy and the camaraderie. And some days it'll be more just like whatever the interesting nature of the topics, or whatever the case may be. But it's again, at the same time, you're putting on you're entertaining, right? You're putting on a performance to a certain extent. When I'm on a podcast, I'm myself, but I'm in a slightly exaggerated version of myself that's enunciating every word and making sure that I'm clearly trying to convey what I'm talking about. And when I read a super chat, I'm like, I'll be like, prolific, like that. That's not how I talk. But again, it's a matter of trying to put on a good performance and an entertaining show for the people that are listening. So
Yeah, it's about manifesting the energy that you need for the moment.
exactly. So that people, and to be honest with you, man, I think that's been a big part of our success, is being able to sort of week in and week out do that, and have people say, hey, I'm going through a bad time right now. This really uplifted me. Or I'm at work for 15 hours. This is really allowing me to endure my day. So when we keep that in mind every single day, the energy just manifests. It just comes. So thankfully, we've been blessed in that regard to have people that really support us in that way.
No doubt. So I kind of want to move from the old school consoles and kind of go into something more recent, because I do want to pay attention to the time, and I know how long some of this stuff goes.
Yeah.
Doing this for a couple of years now, so I kind of got a good eye on how to maintain the time here. So
The Iron Lord effect.
yeah, just so we can get up out of here at a decent time. Let me go ahead and move up to the more recent consoles. And I gotta ask you, so this generation, in my opinion, has been kind of weird, right? And it's just like no one platform is like real comfortable right now. Like Nintendo's in kind of a moment of flux where they could be, changing, getting a new console and whatnot, and it's like, how do I replicate the same, amount of attraction? Because you think one generation prior of Nintendo, everything was a mess.
Yeah.
Right. So they're kind of in their own bag, right? And then you got PlayStation that's, now it's, kind of going towards PC gaming a little bit, and some of its game sales are starting to look a little dire, and who's going to be running SIE now.
Mhm.
Because Hiroki Totoki ain't gonna stay in that position, and Mr.
Right.
Jim is out the building now.
Mhm.
And then for Xbox, it's like you got all these acquisitions, and then right when you think they're gonna pull the trigger and let them know, see you later, then they become everybody's best friend all of a
Mhm.
sudden, and it's kind of weird. It's like you almost can't really put a finger to any of these platforms and say, hey, I completely just, without even thinking, trust what you're
Yeah.
doing right now.
Mhm.
I got to know from your standpoint and seeing how you kind of seen this industry move throughout the years, and you've seen, companies come out of the woodwork and then die a couple
Mhm.
years later. And then some companies be able to stick around for a little bit, and then other companies stick around but not really be consoles
Mhm.
anymore, more or less talking about Sega.
Sega.
But with that being said, like what are your thoughts going into the future with these three major platforms?
I think the main thing for me is that my hope is that we start continuing to see these walled gardens come down. Um, I just think, a lot of people have taken what were essentially marketing cues from these companies in order to attract you to the platform in terms of this platform is better, this platform is better. And they run with that, right? And then you have this console warring where for a lot of people, it becomes about the box and not about the games. And I just think, we reached the point now, like I said, for me, like I game primarily on PC now because I'm not home enough to really enjoy my consoles as much as I can. So that means that my PlayStation is largely collecting dust. My Xbox is largely collecting dust. But then, I have my ROG Ally, I have my laptop that's pretty powerful, and I have my desktop PC where now I can access Xbox games on there, right? Through Xbox, PC Game Pass and things of that nature. I can access now some big PlayStation games, although at this point I've played a lot of those on my console in one way, shape, or form, whether, it takes me a year and a half to beat, Ragnarok or something, because I play it in 2-hour intervals here and there. But I have access to, if I wanted to wait, I'd have access to the vast majority of those things on the PC side as well, because they've opened up to that. So my hope is that continuing to move forward, those walled gardens of the console space really start to come down from everybody, right? I see it's going to be a difficult thing for Nintendo to really do, because that's just not part of their, their ethos. But you have to see the benefits of it, right? The benefits of it, especially in this climate where we're talking about crazy budgets, games costing $300 million to make. At the end of the day, I think the idea of closing off your game to one ecosystem is not sustainable anymore, right? It isn't really sustainable anymore. So I think, to me, my hope is that the necessity of having to figure out more ways to monetize your games and get your games in front of a larger audience means that these exclusive deals that are made, to keep Final Fantasies in one place and things just as an example, the idea of Xbox games being only on that ecosystem, and of course the PC side, that idea starts to go away. So, it becomes up to the gamer where they want to play these games. And then the conversation becomes about the games and not about the platform anymore. So much of this conversation, and to be honest, like sometimes Twitter is an echo chamber, and you start to convince yourself that is the prevalent thinking around the industry. And sometimes when you step back from it, you see that it's not really the case, right?
Okay.
But I really do think that, this idea of, my console is better than yours and this, that, and the other, that stuff would fall to the wayside if the games were in front of as many people as possible and accessible in as many ways as possible. And then at that point, yes, these console manufacturers can continue to make their box and sell it to you, and you can decide where you want to play, whether it's on a PC, a Nintendo, a PlayStation, or an Xbox. You decide, but at the end of the day, the games that you're going to have access to are largely the same across the board. And at that point, the conversation becomes about the quality of the games and not about this console stuff. And that's just the way I hope things start to go. We're looking at a future console generation, right? This upcoming generation where we might see secondary SKUs from both, Xbox and PlayStation that might be mobile, right? There might be some sort of portable sort of gaming platform. That's a real possibility. We're going to see the proliferation of AI into both these console ecosystems, and that's going to be interesting to see how that's implemented, right? And see if there's going to be pushback from the fandom. So it's going to be, this is interesting because there is a real shift and change to what we consider to be, the gaming space, particularly the console gaming space, right? There are changes and evolutions in the PC space, but the console space is really, really being tested. It's just a matter of the fandom being willing to accept these changes. It's going to be interesting to see, because console gaming is going to start to look a lot different. But for me, my primary concern is that the games get the shine they deserve to get. A lot of the argument I've had around the Xbox ecosystem and why, it doesn't shine as much as I think it should. It's just the idea that people are so caught up in warring over, Series X is better or worse than the PlayStation 5, whatever the case may be, that great games on the Xbox side don't get the love that they should. Excuse me. Pardon me.
No, you're all good.
Talking too much. I'm coughing over here. But so yeah, I think that's the main thing. I want to create a space. I want to see a space that is really just focused on the games, and the hardware is so far in the background that it's your decision where you want to play, and it doesn't really matter. We'll see if they start. We've seen steps towards that, but at the end of the day, it's just a matter about if the powers that be see that as a benefit above and beyond trying to just push their ecosystem, their box, and stuff like that. Because again, I don't know that it's sustainable I think it's going to be hard for these people that develop AAA games that are in the hundreds of millions to figure out a way to sort of lessen those costs, right? So their idea is going to be, okay, how do we pivot and how do we make more money from this? And they have to figure out ways that make sense, that don't feel like they're destructive to the gamer, right? So being nickel and dimed and sort of microtransaction up the wazoo and things of that nature don't bode well for how people perceive their games. So I really do think the ideal solution is, hey, let's tear down the wall and get the game in front of as many people as possible. We know there are certain people that will not buy into our platform per se. So let's give them the game where they want to play it, and we make our money that way. And I think the entire industry is better for it. I just don't know that that's going to be the case. I hope it is, but I don't know.
Okay. I have a statement I'm gonna make, and I just want you to react to it. I'm not going to give any excuse for it or nothing. As a matter of fact, I will give an excuse for it, but after you react to it. Okay. Like I'll give more clarity to what I mean after you respond to it. So my statement to you is that the current PS5 is the modern day Xbox One. Thoughts?
I think in some of the stuff that's going on, sure, where it's a little bit behind the 8 ball, some of the thinking, they've held on too long to the things that have made them successful and maybe not pivoted fast enough. And they find themselves a little bit behind the 8 ball. In that regard, sure. In terms of ideology, what's very different is that them being the market leader, them being the the market leader in this space that encompasses just them and Xbox, because we all know Nintendo in a lot of metrics is trouncing both of them. But I will acknowledge that they're a little bit in their own space where it's like they seem immune to some of the same stuff that Xbox and PlayStation deal with. So in terms of that, the ideology and stuff like that, and maybe pivoting a little bit too slowly, I think yes, there are similarities there. I just think that the consequences are not the same. The consequences are
agree
not
with
the
that.
same. I really do feel that this idea of the inertia of the success of the PlayStation 4 has continued to carry them. This idea that for a lot of people, gaming is PlayStation. I remember back in the day, when your parents would yell at you like, I don't want you playing Nintendo, and you were playing a Sega. It's like for a lot of people, for a certain amount of time, gaming was Nintendo. Everything was Nintendo. And for a lot of people, after a certain amount of time, post PlayStation 1, especially PlayStation 2, gaming was PlayStation, right? I don't need you, being on that PlayStation for 8 hours a day and you're playing Xbox for 8 hours a day, whatever. But it's this idea that the PlayStation brand is so strong, particularly post PS4. That because obviously PlayStation 1 was huge, introduction to the space. PlayStation 2 just took it to another level, and then they lost a little bit of that during the 360 PS3 generation, where they had to get it back. And with the PlayStation 4, what I saw is that people wanted them to get that W back, right, with the PlayStation 4. And as soon as the PlayStation 4, the conversation around the PlayStation 4, the marketing of it, as soon as everything that they did was against what the Xbox One was doing, the success just flew, because people really wanted them to be successful in that way again. And I think that just continued to sort of proliferate and into this generation, where in a lot of ways, do I think they deserve that level of success in the PS5 generation? Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. But again, it is that idea of like, it just, for a lot of people, that is what they consider to be gaming. That's the platform that they love, that they want to be a part of, and they're going to forgive missteps and wait for them to rectify them in a way that it kind of feels like Xbox has always sort of been trying to go against the tide, right? And some of the things that they've done have been rakes that they put in front of themselves, right? And just missteps.
Absolutely.
But I think during this generation, they've largely figured out a way to rectify that stuff. It's just that what you come to understand is that the Xbox brand is not as well regarded by the masses, be clear about that, the masses, as the PlayStation brand. And the PlayStation brand is going to be the more popular brand, despite Xbox not necessarily doing anything wrong per se. They pivoted to a subscription model, which I think was the right thing for them to do. They realized that the subscription model on its own wasn't enough. So they said, hey, let's open up to the PC. And now they're to the point where they're saying, hey, we need to open up to as many people as we possibly can. And you're saying, Xbox games, some Xbox games going to PlayStation, and some on Nintendo as well. I think for them, that is the best route to take in order for the Xbox brand to, like I was talking about before, remove itself from that stupid argument about whose box is better, and let the games be the games stand on their own merits, right?
Yeah, they're kind of doing Trojan horse marketing right now.
Yeah. So I really do think it's what needs to happen. But your point about PlayStation, yes, I think a lot of the stuff is similar. I just think the consequences aren't remotely the same.
Ooh, I like the way that you kind of put that, because the consequences ain't near the same. But all right, just to give you a little bit of clarity to what I meant by that statement in particular. I know a lot of people, because I said that statement on Twitter, and of course, I'm Ham Solo. Everybody knows that I'm an Xbox guy first, but I still, but some people don't understand that I still enjoy PlayStation. I still enjoy playing on PC. I still enjoy some Nintendo, but I enjoy PlayStation in PC gaming a lot more, and then Xbox is like my main. Right. And I feel like I let that be known loud, but people hear what they want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is something I can't control. But just to bring more clarity to it, the reason I say PlayStation 5 is the modern day Xbox One is because first party games are
Mm-hmm.
kind of all over the place, right? And COVID didn't help that out.
Right.
The focus on kind of TV shows and the implementation to the new app that they have on PlayStation to be able to watch movies and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's the exact same as having a whole extra HDMI cable into the thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still kind of a little bit TV.
Mm-hmm.
Also losing some studios.
All right.
Don't forget about Lionhead for Xbox, right? But now we're seeing, this some of the same stuff happen with Sony and their studios. We just had the whole thing with what is it called as of yesterday, Little Big Planet,
Mm-hmm.
right? The subscription services, they dove headfirst into that this time. They made a point to, hey, now we're going to put these two subscription services that we have together and try to make more deals around that. And then also something that they said they wouldn't do, which is
Right.
backwards compatibility.
Right.
They said that they were not. We believe in generations. Now they're backpedaling.
Okay. Yeah.
They have a PC focus now. That's wild. I mean, it's kind of coming out a little bit slow, and I feel like the whole we're waiting a year is more or less telling the people to calm down. But in reality, they're kind of playing catch up with Nixes and getting things caught back up. As you see, they hurry up and got the Miles Morales joint out and in the rematch. And I believe they had the remaster on there. They got Last of Us Part 1 out. We know 2 is going to be coming to it. Ratchet and Clank, yada yada yada. I don't have to name every single game.
Yeah.
And then what was the last one I was going to say? There was one last one that I was going to say, but yeah, the big one to me is kind of the focus on PC.
Right.
This generation, I feel like, and I've heard it from other PlayStation fans, like PlayStation content creators. Wow, this generation, it seems like they've been more loud about PC than they have been about their own console. Although the console's been selling,
right,
they've been really ensuring the PC nation that, hey, we're here for you guys.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, they're buying studios, kind of like Microsoft was doing towards the end of last generation. And now they even got a pro to say, hey, this console isn't technically, I mean, I know it's been kind of walking on Xbox in some areas, sure, but they're supposedly coming out with a pro console to say, hey, we're not going to be the weakest one on the block at all in any aspect at all. So I'm saying a lot of that kind of looks like the Xbox One.
Yeah.
But without
100%.
a lot of the repercussions, as you were saying.
Yeah. I really do think it's just, they have the benefit, that little bit of that cushion of kind of being at the top of the heap, in terms of, again, and more and more we've seen that those metrics are starting to matter less and less, right? The way success in the console space is being measured is changing and evolving, and Microsoft was kind of the first one to go that route, and it behooved them to do that because the other comparison is not favorable to them. The console sales, game sales, those things are not favorable to them. But again, the space has evolved to the point where people are looking at these service-based games and things and the metrics around those things. And I'm not a big fan of that stuff, but again, that's just the reality of where we're at. So I don't think you're not wrong at all. You're not wrong at all. And it's an interesting comparison to make because you see what it means to be sort of the favored console and how that sort of cushions you against a lot of this stuff. At the end of the day, a changing tide means that you have to pivot at some point. You cannot be so stubborn and not change. I kind of think, despite the success of the N64, right? I think them not pivoting to CD earlier, obviously they lost Final Fantasy, and there was a long while where they realized that they can't stand toe to toe with these guys. I've always felt that you cannot have 3 consoles in the market that kind of do the same things. You can have 3, but one of them has to be doing something different. And Nintendo realized that they have to be the ones to do something different, whether it's because, you know, they're just not going to be able to make a console that is as powerful as the other 2 and compete on that level. If they could, it would be interesting because their first party alone trounces the other 2. Like but it's just not where they're at. You know, it's not, and it's not part of the ideology. I think when we go back to the Sega conversation with PlayStation, it was Sony's willingness to understand that they can take a loss initially on hardware and make it up on the back end by selling software. It's something that, you know, Sega of Japan never wanted to do, and Japanese companies in general have never wanted to do. Is that they wanted to make profit from the get-go, from the onset. And it's, you know, when we talk about the Dreamcast and the Saturn, a lot of the fighting around that stuff was the fact that the management on the US side was like, no, particularly Bernie Stoller, you know, his thinking was like, hey, we let's make the most powerful machine that we can. We'll take the loss on the hardware and then we'll make it up on the back end with software. And it's just, it was never part of what, you know, in general, I've found to be like the Japanese ideology of selling consoles, right? Obviously, PlayStation has sort of changed that, but even with the PS5, according to them, they started making, you know, it started being profitable per se fairly quickly. If not I don't think out of the gate, but it might have been pretty close to out of the gate, at least by their metrics. So, yeah, I just
over like a year and a half,
yeah,
and which is a short amount of time,
right. Which is definitely a short amount of time for you know, PlayStation and Xbox. Usually, it's by the time you see a little bit of a that first revision or a slim model is when you know that they're actually making money on the console sales, right? So, yeah, it really is. It's super interesting. It's super interesting because I really do think these machines, these ecosystems are going to look a lot different than what we see them now, right? We're going to see the evolution of that. It's not going to be, you know, this drastic change, but we're going to see those steps, and we're going to see the implementation of things into these consoles that we haven't seen before. You know, the AI conversation is super interesting because it's like when you hear some of the rumors about what Microsoft's doing at like a, you know, at a metal level in terms of implementing AI to their to you know, whatever the next machine is. It's you know, it's not something that we've seen before. You know, the idea of using, you know, potentially using ARM technology in conjunction with, you know, traditional AMD, you know, CPU stuff is interesting. How does that work out? So again, I keep saying the same word, but it's an interesting time to be a gamer because that pays attention to this stuff. Because if you're the average gamer, you know, you don't care about the stuff. You say, no. When's the new thing coming out?
Yeah, right over
and that's probably the smart thing to do, right? But
it's the most time efficient thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Just enjoy the games and forget. Don't worry about how the sausage is made. Just whatever. Just enjoy the games for what they are. But again, in the podcast, don't look at the ingredients. So.
All right, but shout out to Prolific. He had a $2 super chat from the earlier conversation we were having, saying laughter is the best medicine. Life is too short.
Absolutely. I don't take myself too damn seriously at all, man. I really don't. And I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had that has, you know, kind of made me that way. You know, it's just, you have to damn near be threatening me for me to feel insulted. For me, that's kind of like where I'm at. Like, you know, everything is jokes until it isn't, and it really has to be something serious for me to really, you know, not approach it in that way. But again, at the same time, you know, you see us having these conversations. They're serious conversations in that, you know, we're trying to think about how this stuff is moving forward, how this stuff is progressing in a real way, because people want to come and listen to that stuff. So
No doubt. And I have an extra question to kind of throw on the top of that before we kind of move into your background with podcasting.
Mhm.
But then the next question I'm gonna ask about these you know, kind of future talks with or actually it's a question that has to do with future talks when it comes to PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. I'm wondering what you think the landscape will kind of look like 5 years from now, seeing that Sony and I'm gonna separate this. So it's Sony
Mhm.
and Xbox in this
Mhm.
specific part because I feel like Nintendo, as you said, they're kind of doing their own thing
Mhm.
and they have some catching up to kind of do on their own with certain things,
Certain
as we were
things,
talking
yeah.
about internet and stuff like that. But and we already see that they're teaming up with Microsoft to bring Call of Duty over there. So
Mhm.
obviously, internet is going to have to be more implemented over there. But let's stick to Microsoft and Sony for a second. And I want to ask you, with the additions that each company has made, not only just to like traditional gaming, but also to PC and mobile gaming. What
Yeah.
do you think the landscape between these two platforms look like down the line as gaming grows to be more of outside of a console experience?
Well, I'm gonna tell you what my hope is. I don't, and hopefully that, the Sostradamus, maybe hopefully that's what happens. But like I said before, I really do think that both of these both of these companies have looked at the mobile space, right? And they see that perhaps it for the core gamer, the idea of playing a game that is more of a core game on their phone isn't appealing, right? And they've seen the success of something like a Steam Deck or ROG Ally and these mobile PCs. And they're saying, okay, there is something to be said about going back to the portable space. But how do we evolve what the portable space has been in the past? Well, you look at the ROG Ally specifically because the Steam Deck out of the box is really just supporting Steam. You can obviously, do things to support Windows 11 proper and to get, other storefronts on there. But the ROG Ally is really just a Windows 11 PC. And it's allowing you to put all your PC games, all your Steam stuff on there, all of your Xbox, PC Game Pass stuff in there, your Epic Game Store, your Ubisoft stores, all of these storefronts on there, and you just have everything that you need to pretty much game on most platforms there. And I think looking 5 years into the future, if I am to believe that both of them have some sort of portable SKU in addition to what their flagship, under your TV console is going to be, I think that these things have to open up the ecosystem to bring in everything, right? If you give me a portable sort of Xbox that only allows me to play my Xbox ecosystem on the go, it's kind of an L for me. So my hope is that they both see that, again, this conversation about how do we get our games in front of as many people as possible and give them as many options as to how they engage with those games as possible. When you're thinking about a portable SKU, yeah, you're probably looking at the hardcore Xbox gamer double dipping to be able to play all of their stuff on the go, right? But you're also, my hope is that they're thinking about, hey, how do we make this portable version of this Xbox appealing to somebody who maybe isn't interested in buying the Xbox that goes under your TV at all, right? Well, you make it interesting by allowing them to access that Xbox ecosystem in addition to other ecosystems, right? So that's my hope that in 5 years we're looking at, both of these consoles with two SKUs that, allow you to engage with it at home as you've normally been doing, and allows you to take it on the go in addition to opening you up to all of these other sort of PC centric storefronts and ecosystems that, again, gives you the option of playing whatever games you want, how you want to play them. And by doing that, making their games more appealing because, again, there's no wall there. You play their games how you want to play them, and then both of them giving their specific ecosystems and communities incentives and reasons to go to one or the other, right? When you look at Game Pass, the big thing is first party games day and date, right? For day one, right? So that's still going to be an incentive on the Xbox side. And I'm looking, hopefully PlayStation starts to think that way, at least for some of their games, right? They may not, the numbers may not number when it comes to, hey, let's sell the next, Last of Us, let's put it in a service. Maybe that's not what they're thinking is, but again, the movement towards something like that is what I hope to see in 5 years, and we'll see, and we'll see. And then the conversation around AI, for me, I want it to be used to make these worlds feel more alive. For me, the idea of giving me NPCs in worlds where I don't necessarily need them to be as vast as some people like to see them. I could take a smaller world that feels alive and densely populated that allows me to interact with every aspect of it. That's kind of what I want to see. Obviously, there are going to be AI implementations that have to do with, how games are built.
How do you feel about AI in general? Like, just kind of a side question. All that.
I just think, there's people that are trying to use it in order to make money, right? And that's, a lot of people conflate that conversation with, okay, how are we using it to improve the games that we're building today, right? And the problem is that a lot of it, the conversation around it is, okay, it's going to be taking jobs away from, from human beings that used to do certain things. I think the ideal way is to look at the tedious and repetitive nature of some of the tasks that game developers go through on a game-to-game basis and see how that could be more sort of industrialized and made easier. And then, to be perfectly honest with you, these implementations where you're like, okay, I'm going to have this NPC voiced by AI and not a human being. That's kind of a different conversation where it's like, I understand as gamers, we have to understand that without some of these changes being made, this conversation around ballooning budgets and certain games being unsustainable and certain and then for me, reaching the point where certain games can't be made anymore because they haven't figured out a way to be able to save money is going to be concerning. And the idea that AI can help that, again, these are evolutions in just technology in general. It's happened since the beginning, since humans can recollect. We've automated certain things in order to make our lives easier, but at the same time, that always leads to somebody human losing their job, right?
Right.
I think it's just the reality of the situation. We have to figure out the best way to do things. And that's just, what can I say? That's a super broad conversation to have. And we're going to see things that we're not going to like. Everything has growing pains. It's going to grow. It's going to change. It's going to evolve. But I can't really say, how do I feel about it? It's going to depend. It's going to be on a case by case basis how I feel about it.
Let me ask you a direct question.
Yeah.
So I see PS5 blows. Man, that name cracks me up every time.
Yeah.
But anyways, he says AI is probably the main reason for layoffs. Take-Two revenue was up a lot. Then they laid off people. And with that being said, I got to ask you, as somebody that's been around a little while, myself is included, folks like Infinite Umbra, Mike Johnson, a lot of us in here, a lot of us gamers, and shout out to y'all out there, because I thought it was hilarious early in the show when everybody was like, good morning. I tell you what, it's only the gaming community that look around. I mean, it's almost 4:00 Eastern, and y'all telling me good morning. That's how we kicking with gamers right now, because everybody stayed up too late gaming, and now they waking up. They waking up in the middle of the goddamn day.
Anyways, exactly. They're sitting with their cup of coffee at 3 p.m. Yeah, that's what's up.
But the direct question I got to ask you is, so we've seen layoffs throughout
Yeah.
our time in many different industries, and you just got done alluding to that. We've seen that with, the cell phone industry. We've seen it with the car industry. We've seen it with all different types of different things where things become more like being able to be made without us actually, putting it together. The robots and stuff like that are putting it together for us and whatnot. And we've seen layoffs happen, but then we've seen people make new jobs due to layoffs happening. And then we've seen things grow to be bigger and bigger as time goes. Do you think that this, with AI happening, do you think that will somehow transition to new jobs opening? Or do you think AI is just flat out taking jobs away from people?
Well, the fact that we created AI, right, means that as it evolves, you're going to need people that understand how to talk to it in order to get the results that you want, right? So, in some senses, you still need that human influence in order for the AI to do what you want it to do, right? You have to be able to teach it, quote unquote, right, to do what it is that you need. So so long as that continues to be the case and we don't have a Skynet situation, I still think there will be new jobs and opportunities created, like in anything else, right? When they automated the car manufacturing industry, you still needed people to make sure that the assembly lines and these machines on these assembly lines were doing what they need to do. And when they break down, obviously you need a human being to fix them. Kind of the same thing, like where it's like you're going to have less of those jobs, but absolutely you will still need those jobs in order to regulate what this artificial intelligence is doing. So in that regard, yes. Now, one thing we have to remember also is that gaming is in a unique place in that it is this confluence of art and technology. And these companies, the vast majority of the bigger companies in the gaming space, are beholden to shareholders. They're beholden to a board of directors and shareholders. And any publicly traded company, any company, period, but it's specifically a publicly traded company, your goal is to continue to grow and your goal is to continue to make money. That doesn't always line up with a company that's supposed to be about creativity and innovation. And because creativity and innovation doesn't necessarily always translate to monetary gain.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Sometimes
Sometimes,
it's about being repetitive.
right. So the problem in the gaming space is that we have this sort of cross section of art and tech where the expectation from these bigger companies that are publicly traded is you're constantly figuring out a way to make more money. And when you're doing that, the implementation of AI is probably, hey, how do we automate some of these processes so that we can eliminate some of these jobs so that the money we're making is more? And that's the bottom line of it. It's not about then we've done this, how do we do the morally right thing and figure out where to put these people that we've just displaced? That's not the thinking of a big company. It just isn't. So we have to understand that more and more as this transition happens, the realities of it, especially with the bigger companies, is that the idea is to figure out ways to make more money for their shareholders and to continue to grow the business. And that doesn't necessarily line up with what the end product that the gamers want, that the fans want. And it's going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to be a bumpy ride because we're going to see a lot of things that we're not going to be happy with. And then, and then on a smaller scale, when you see perhaps an indie game with 10 devs on it be able to make a crazy open world, that feels alive and is dense and not necessarily super vast, but dense and feels alive and feels lived in, you're like, oh wow, this is how they were able to implement AI into this, right? And make this type of game with this type of size team and a smaller budget. So it's just going to be my worry is that the big companies are going to use it to make as much money as possible while not worrying about the displacement that happens. And that's just the fact of it.
Okay, 5 years from now, Nintendo.
5 years from now, Nintendo. My hope is that the next iteration of the Switch, whatever it is, first of all, that they don't do the bonehead move of just pivoting completely to something different. I think Nintendo hopefully has realized that they are that third that third vertical in the gaming space that has to be different than the other two. They cannot survive while putting out a machine that is similar to the other two but less powerful, that is reliant mostly on first party. It has to be something different, and I hope that they understand that that's their lane and they continue to do that. My hope is that the next system has 2 screens again, honestly.
Oh,
If
Okay.
they really go back to what made their portable systems super
like
popular,
3DS and stuff like
yeah, and integrate that some way into what, their modern thinking about what the Switch is, while at the same time doing the same thing, making it this hybrid thing that you can plug into, your TV and had that experience. That's kind of where I hope they are. To our conversation, before, obviously, if they improve their sort of network infrastructure to understand that, the modern gamer just needs certain, quality of life improvements in order to really, really engage with their products in the same way that they would engage with a PlayStation or an Xbox. So my hope is that they're thinking along those lines, but obviously they're going to do it in a very Nintendo way, whatever that is.
Sure.
I hope that they're over the gimmick stuff. Obviously the gimmick of the Switch was the portability of it and being able to connect it to the TV as well. But everybody remembers HD Rumble, right? As part of that, another part of that gimmick. And that, whatever, that, a couple of games used it and that was it, and kind of fell to the wayside. So my hope is that they just focus on making a machine that is able to also be more attractive to third parties, and have more third party stuff on there. Because obviously, if they make a machine that is capable of doing some, upscaling stuff of that, obviously it's an NVIDIA sort of chipset they're going to have working in there. So, some form of DLSS that allows them to sort of be on par. You talked about, Call of Duty and stuff of that nature. Obviously, giving people the option to play those games natively on there without, the ideas of cloud stuff and whatever, which, that's cool, but it's not quite there yet. You want to have a machine that's at least capable enough to play some of this stuff natively. So my hoping is that, the machine that comes out is capable of at least that stuff, in addition to utilizing some of this new technology that allows, the games to run smoother at, lower native resolutions and have some sort of upscaling solution. So we'll see if that's what they do. But in 5 years, if they've done that, in 5 years, they're still going to be, making money hand over fist. That's what I expect for them to be doing. I don't know that whatever happens between Xbox and PlayStation will make them pivot so greatly where they start, they feel like they have to do what the other two are doing. But who knows? We'll see. We'll see
All right. Well,
what the younger generation of Nintendo execs thinks about that. We'll see.
it'll definitely be interesting, especially as you just got done saying, like younger people getting into high tier roles and kind of shaking things up will
Yep.
definitely be interesting to see down the line. I have one last question to ask about this kind of topic before we move on to the last piece of the show, which is going to be your history with Iron Lords, and then also some of the quick hitter questions I have
hmm
out of here. But Cord said something in the chat just a little bit ago saying, why are you making as much as Fortnite? Says shareholders. My question to you, with that kind of being said, is where do you kind of see live service games going, seeing that like this generation has really shown us, some can cut it, some can't, but what y'all need to do is stop spending so much dang money on thinking that this thing is going to work. Look at something like Suicide Squad right now. Not
Yeah.
saying it's a bad game in particular. It's not really my kind of game. But I'm not saying it's a bad game, but my goodness, $70 for a live service.
Yeah. My hope is that I don't see any of these companies saying abandoning it completely and saying, "Hey, it's not worth it to invest this money to try to put a game out there that's going to have that sort of
Sony was
appeal."
thinking about 12 of them, man.
Yeah, so that
Crazy.
that was the business guy trying to say, "Hey, I'm just gonna shoot as many darts at this board as I possibly can, and one of them's got to stick." And the problem with that is that, you know, the ones that don't stick probably fail like catastrophically, like, you know, a week into their, you know, this ain't a week, a month or two into their launch, they're dead because people just don't
Home
have the
stars.
bandwidth. Yeah, people just don't have the bandwidth to play these types of games. So my hope is that they start looking at these things as, hey, when I look at the hook of these service games, it reminds me of the old school, like literally back in the arcades, these simpler games that hooked you into the gameplay loop while at the same time causing you to spend more and more and more money, right? It's about taking these games, finding the simple sort of the loop that is attractive to the gamer, expanding upon it in a way that is fun, sustainable for X amount of time, right? And thinking about that time as, hey, maybe this game is relevant. We spent X amount of money. This game is super fun. The gameplay loop, the replay value is there. But this is a game we expect to stay relevant for 2 or 3 years instead of I need this game to be Fortnite and to be a forever game. If they start looking at it from that perspective and having more reasonable expectations about what these games can do in a market that's already saturated with them, where a lot of people have already decided where their bandwidth is going, right? Whether it's a Fortnite, or Roblox, or a Minecraft, or a Warzone, whatever, or the MOBAs, or things of that nature, you know, a Valorant, you know, a Valorant, or a whatchamacallit, an Overwatch, whatever the case may be. If you are willing to accept that the game can be smaller and have a smaller window of success, and that's expected of it, I think you'll find that, you know, these games still within that small window, you're gonna find an audience, and they're gonna make substantially more money than a $70 game may make over the course of its lifetime, whatever the case may be. But it just has to be a willingness to take, you know, you know, close your eyes a little bit and not have this Fortnite expectation of everything that you put out there, because Fortnite is just such a special beast. Like when you think about
People
what
forget
Epic,
Fortnite was kind of an accident.
it was an accident. It was Epic working with the PUBG team, seeing the success and copying it and taking this game that they had already built, this tower defense game, and turning it into this. And essentially shuttering everything else that Epic did apart from just the Unreal Engine in order to support this game. Epic is Unreal 5 and it's Fortnite, and that's it. They don't really do much of anything else. And
They shelved Unreal Tournament once
Right.
Fortnite came.
And they had their other MOBA game, right? I forgot what it was called. So yeah, this is the amount of dedication it takes for Fortnite to be Fortnite. And I think some of the decision making around, you know, these other companies trying to mimic that did not take that into consideration. Even when you look at like a Halo Infinite, it's like, did y'all stop and think about what the level of support would have to be for this thing to be on that level and to be that popular day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out? Like, it's a level of support that is unprecedented for any game. So this is what you're up against. You didn't think about that and say, okay, how can I take the best aspects of this and try to capitalize on it so I can make that level of money for a shorter amount of time and be okay with it? And I think my hope is that is what the thinking is now. There's like, hey, okay, we need to figure out how to try to get some of this success on a smaller budget with a shorter leash, and being okay with that. And not everybody just trying to be the next Fortnite, because you can't be.
No doubt, because Halo, because in my opinion, Halo had everybody captivated, right?
It did.
But they literally slipped on the way through the door. So it was just like, man, y'all had something cooking. Y'all had something extra special, and you guys slipped on your way into the building, and it was just it was really weird to see, because it's just like, man, if you guys maybe even compartmentalized it a little bit and just said, here's like the story, you'll get the multiplayer next summer. Yeah. Then it kind of set the, the mind to, oh, I'm going to enjoy this as much as I can. And then I'm going to get into that multiplayer once it drops, and it's going to have plenty of content. You can't come out and have this just sparse amount of content and expect everybody, because remember, when Halo Infinite came out, it was popping.
Yeah.
And then once people notice there ain't a whole lot more here, they start leaving.
The people that play those games hardcore are ravenous. They're going to go through that content very quick. So you have to make sure you have a content pipeline that's going to be able to support that. And it was funny, leading up to Halo Infinite, one of the things I kept saying on ILP is like, I really do believe that the multiplayer going free to play is the best way for them to bring Halo back in a big way that can attract the modern gamer and not just the people that love Halo already. I thought that was the best way to go about it. I'm like, but be careful what you wish for. I really do hope that they understand what turning this game into a free-to-play thing means. I really hope that they're ready for what that is. And unfortunately, they weren't. And it didn't matter if the game played great. People played it for X amount of time, and then they sitting there waiting, and no more content. They walked away. And then, they've had a little bit of a renaissance since then. They've changed some things around, and ultimately, I think for the most part now, they've mostly moved on to working on whatever the next Halo is going to be. But hopefully, it's been a lesson learned.
Impressions matter, man.
They really do matter. They really do matter.
Look at Power World. Look at look at Helldivers right now. That first impression, they were like, oh, okay, and they're like, well, we got content next week. And the week after that, we got new guns. The week after that, we got mechs. And the week after that, and it's just like they almost hit me with so much content. I was like, yo, I can't keep up with y'all.
Exactly. And that's a considerably smaller game, right? So it's good that you mentioned that, because I think that game and how it was built is kind of the archetype I hope they start to look at and say, hey, we can do this on a smaller scale and be okay with it. And even, you never know, right? Another thing is, when you build something to be a certain thing, the problem with that is you're not taking into account that the fact that your thing blows up because of how the community perceives it. You could build something with esports in mind. If the community doesn't see it that way or gravitate to it, it doesn't matter what you did. So sometimes it's just putting out a great product that people have fun engaging with, knowing that you have to have this roadmap ready to go, and hoping that people love it and gravitate to it. And you see Helldivers right now. Mm-hmm. You see Helldivers. All they need to do, really, to me, the only misstep was, hey, figuring out a way to get that on an Xbox, at launch, and even then, like, if they're able to do that, if that happens in a reasonable amount of time, you're going to see this sort of second wave of a zeitgeist moment for that game when it does come to an Xbox, right? So I don't know. To me, that is the archetype. That is what they should be looking at when it comes to service games. And I think a lot of the crying around them and a lot of the fallout that comes from failed service games could be mitigated by just people looking at the realities of that space, how hard it is to be successful in that space, and creating a product that isn't breaking the bank. and just making something that's fun to play and letting that be the lead, and not having these visions of dollar signs in your eyes and ultimately failing and then losing all of that money. So Yeah.
No doubt, man. So let's go on ahead and move on because we're getting to the, to that 2 hour point. And I did want to ask you, about your, like early days ILP and a few of these
Mhm.
quick hitter questions. So let's get through that so we could end the show at a reasonable time. Let me go on ahead and ask, let me go on ahead and make the statement. Like meeting you guys at PAX was like, I'm like no cap when I say this. That's kind of life changing for me, right?
Appreciate it.
Not just like just meeting up with you guys, but atmosphere wise.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen anything like that before. Like, sure, I've been to like a convention with like old games and stuff like that, but the retro thing is a lot different than the ongoing projects in actual devs on
Like
the
devs.
like ain't no devs really on the floor at these classic game conferences and
Right,
stuff like
right.
that, right? There might be like Mortal Kombat people there or like some people in cosplay and stuff like that, but there ain't really that like dev or or community manager or anything like that at any of those type of old school retro conferences. So going to PAX, seeing you guys, seeing the way that you guys got kind of moved collectively, I was clearly not used to that.
Yeah.
I'm running around with my damn head cut off, not knowing what the hell I'm doing, not knowing what time to be where, not knowing when to check my damn phone, not knowing anything. I'm having a blast, but then again, I'm also just like on a train that's going way faster than I anticipated it going when I got on it. So seeing you guys move was something special. Seeing you and King working together, doing y'all's interviews and stuff like that was really cool to see. I got to ask you now, like going way back to before you guys were at conventions doing this type of stuff. I'm talking ground level ILP, right? This is before you guys got, the apartment in the sky, you know what I'm talking about.
that hasn't happened yet, but
on the east side, you know what I'm saying?
Finally got a piece of the pie. I don't know. If we did, it's a very small piece.
A piece of the pie is still some pie. But anyways, but anyway, so I want you to take me back then because you had already alluded to earlier in this show that hey, I already knew Cog from like kindergarten, first, second grade ish, right? I already knew King since I was like 14 years old, right? But now you're starting a podcast. At what point were you getting kind of fully entrenched in being a podcast?
Okay. So before I get into that, I say that this year was a learning lesson for us as well, because what we realized is that when we've been doing this a number of years now, we get to PAX, everybody sort of knows what they have to do. We put our head down and we go. And we did a bad job of, remembering that this was the first PAX we had so many other people with us, and we didn't do the proper onboarding of like what to expect as soon as we get there. The fact that everybody starts puts their heads down and run. We need to do a better job of explaining that process, especially from day one, because again, like you said, there were moments where you didn't like we're moving a certain way. We already know that the vast majority of the other guys know what's going on, but there were some new guys that kind of, especially you, because you were working obviously with LogNet, but then you're doing your own TSWS thing as well. So when you had your own stuff, it was a different pace, and maybe that didn't necessarily coincide with what we were doing, so it was hard to keep up. So what I realized is we have to do a better job of that. Like, hey, this is what to expect. This is how we move. Always check your messages, because everything is going to go into that sort of message train, so that everybody's kind of on the same page, whether it's, where we're doing afterwards, what we're doing on the show floor, what am I looking at versus what you're looking at. So we realized that we're like, hey, okay, we have to be better about, when you guys are coming on with us, because we know what we have to do, and we get caught up in that and forget that, for a lot of people, it's their first time.
Bro, I was loose.
Yeah.
I was loose out there, and I was there's a good portion where I thought I knew what I was doing, and then I realized I didn't.
Right. And then, so
it was pretty wild. But as you were saying, what was the beginning though, like for ILP getting started? And you guys mustering up the courage to, be live and, be willing to talk to people. And I remember Boom saying, like, it took y'all a minute just to get to 1K.
Yeah, for a long time. I mean, so the way ILP started was that it was initially something started by Addict and Cog, and then two the original lords that were on the show were Lord SWAT and Lord Sleet, and it was a Destiny show. It was just about Destiny. And so what started happening is, at some point of it being a Destiny show, the guys realized that they wanted to make a more general gaming show, right? And so they switched up in that, where they had Destiny content, but they also had more general gaming stuff. And in doing that, they started having people come on. They weren't necessarily Destiny centric. So, Cog, obviously knowing myself and King, we weren't in the space at all. He says, "Hey man, you guys want to guest you want to guest on the show?" And it was, me hearing, Cog had already told me about, "Hey man, I'm doing this podcasting thing and kind of trying to take it seriously. Just give it a listen, And I'm like, wow, because at that point I wasn't really listening to podcasts at all. And then I got into, like listening to them, and then listening to things like Podcast Beyond.
You were a listener at first.
Oh yeah, 100% a listener at first. And then I did that, that first initial sort of guest appearance on Iron Lords. I remember we talked about like Res Evil 7. And it was just, it was your first appearance. Don't look that up. Please don't look that up. And then I think King came on after me, or he might have been on before me. I don't remember. But then it was myself and King both did, guesting gigs on. And so what happened is, after that, I think that when Lord SWAT and Lord Sleet they had just other commitments and stuff that kind of made it difficult for them to consistently be on the show. So kind of the decision was made that they were going to, leave the show. And at that point, Cog reached out to myself and King, was like, "Hey man, do you guys want to be part of the show?" And I'm like, for me, I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm not a podcaster with like to be on this all the time and whatever. It's like, it's gonna be fun, man. We're gonna try to make this thing a thing and grow it, And I think what really sort of sold it for me ultimately, when I stepped back from it, was this idea of like, I didn't have a lot of time to spend with King or Cog over the years preceding that for a long time. Like, we weren't hanging out like we were. Obviously, everybody's an adult. Everybody has their own thing going on, and you don't get to hang out with your boys like you used to.
Sure, you got families and whatnot.
Exactly. Everybody has, adult responsibilities. So it's like, this is an opportunity to sit down with my boys and talk smack about gaming and in a way that we used to do back in the day. But at the same time, now all of a sudden, it's like, we're adults. Our takes on certain things are different. And we're going to be talking about the industry in addition to just talking about games and our love for games. And, Cog from the beginning saw that. And, and we had Addict, these guys met through gaming online and stuff of that nature. And Addict, obviously fits right into that. He's younger than us and didn't grow up with us, but he's right in that vein where he's been gaming his entire life. Gaming is one of the most important parts of his life. So it fits. And, he absolutely fits as well with just our comedic sensibilities and things of that nature. So it was just something that I had no idea I was going to do. I was a little bit resistant to start. And then we went in, and all of a sudden, a couple weeks in, you start really finding your bearings and say, okay, who am I on this podcast? And what we came to realize is that we kind of fall into a lot of the same sort of roles that we played when we were young, like in terms of like the group and how we interact with each other. So we were like, okay, the idea is just to be ourselves, and that camaraderie and that and that camaraderie and that special sauce comes through, and that's the rest is sort of history. We started, and each of us started getting more and more comfortable, and then all of a sudden, King made it. He said, "Hey man, we need to put our faces out there. First off, we really have to make sure that people know who we are and we become personalities as opposed to these omniscient voices in the air. And that was big. That was really big, and also to kind of start to grow more and make ourselves known. So that was kind of the beginning of it. It was by accident, definitely. Yeah, I think it was by accident that Cog got into it, because I think it was something that Attic wanted to bring to the table. And then, it just so happens that things shifted in a way that made sense for me and King to come on, and the rest is history.
I mean, that's a pretty wild story. I mean, to go from being the viewer to one of the main members is something special, right?
Oh, 100% is, because I had no idea that I could do this. Pardon me, man. I'm coughing. Yeah, I had no idea that I was capable of doing this. And then, once you start getting your bearings, you feel a little more comfortable. You just start saying, hey, I'm just going to be myself on here. And then you realize that it's performant, right? So it's like, oh, it's myself, but it's a little bit of an exaggerated version of myself. And, and that with that brings the sort of entertainment value of it. So, it's still a learning and growing process. I by no means feel like I have this, tucked under my belt, like I got this. But at the very least, I'm not afraid to do it, and I think a lot of that, culminated, we were able to open up for the Sacred Symbols 300 in New York City at the SVA Theater. And for us to be able to do like our first live show and be up on a stage, we were nervous going in, but we weren't fazed by it. We got up there, we were able to do it. I'm like, wow, you really surprise yourself every day with what you're capable of. And that's podcasting has brought that to me, because again, a lot of things that never in my wildest dreams I thought I'd be doing or be capable of doing even remotely well. So the fact that, we can do this every single week and continue to improve at it is a blessing, But again, it's you learn something new every day. You learn something new every day about yourself, about life. And this has definitely taught me things about myself that I didn't know.
I mean, I personally, and shout out to Blue Moon FC. He says, great story, Sav. You guys helped me get into I'm guessing he's saying the community.
Into this community, yeah.
Into this community. I love your E3 watch along, whatnot. So
yeah,
I mean, what I wanted to say though is I just think it's wild to be a viewer and then become part of the podcast, and then be at that ground base level of working your way up to 1K, and then you guys are now clear past 12 now, right?
We're almost at 22, I believe.
Woo!
Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah. I'm sitting over here thinking it's 12. Y'all over 20 right now, which is nuts. And you guys are now in a position to where you guys are helping people understand stuff, see things, go to events, maneuver. And sure, you guys are still in learning on a lot of this stuff, but even teachers learn, right? Even your college professor is still learning stuff every day, right? So I mean, I just think it's something that you definitely should applaud to yourself about, and just be like, and that's why I said, to the east side, a slice of the pie, all that stuff, right? because y'all really went from ground level to now being watched by thousands of people on a regular basis, and that's something that not very many people can say, and that kudos to you and the crew.
Yeah, that's humbling, man. Every time you look up, I mean, again, we remember when there were just not even 5 people in the chat. And we used to get mad at our boys, like, hey, man, you're going to come out and, be in the chat, right? You're going to support. Yeah. And some of them were like, they'd come the first time and then not do it. you know, and then, you know, you have King and Cog yelling at them like, you know, it's one of those things like we're so blessed now to, you know, you look up and there are 1,000 people watching you live. And on YouTube, you know, YouTube really wants you to be making videos and stuff like that. And we do that now as well. But for a live podcast to get that many people live on a Sunday, it, you know,
Regularly.
regularly, it's we realized how special that is, and we don't take that for granted at all, which is why, you know, you see us there 4 or 5 hours making sure that we read every single super chat, because it's important that we let our community know, like, we didn't get this on our own. This is y'all being here with us. So we'll never take that for granted. And from the beginning, you know, obviously people gave us chances and open doors for us, and the thinking was always we have to reciprocate that when we're able to. Absolutely, we have to reciprocate that. And you know, I think so far we hopefully have done a good job of trying to do that. And hopefully whatever opportunities await us in the future to continue to do that. But that's always the goal, right? To uplift one another in the community, the people that want to talk, that love games and want to talk about games, you know, and finding inroads into this space. At the same time, you know, a big thing has always been also to make sure that we talk about the industry and developers in particular, and give them their flowers when they're here. Because a lot of times, you know, we're growing up, you don't know who's making these games at all. You know, you probably heard of Miyamoto, and that's pretty much it, you know. And then as you get older, like you know, you start having an appreciation for the people that make your games, and you start having a curiosity about how, you know, their stories and how that comes to be. And, you know, our thing is about making sure that we're able to get people on the show to give them their flowers in the moment, you know, and be able to talk about them. And in the process, obviously, right, you create relationships with some of these people that you realize that, you know, they're human beings just like you, you know. So it's a, everything is a learning process, and it's all humbling, but what you do, you know, what you start to realize is like, hey, everybody just likes to talk about the things that they've done in their life. You know, everybody should get that opportunity to be able to say, hey, this is how I got here, because it's inspiring to a lot of people. You know, you know, people that have said, hey, have gotten into the podcasting space because they listen to us. You know, that's amazing. People that just listen to us because they're having a bad day and we put a smile on their face. You know, devs that have come on our show and said, hey, like, that's the best interview I've ever had with anybody, because you guys cared, you did your research. You know, Cog is a beast at that when it comes to, you know, researching. And
His
like,
introductions are
legendary. But the work that he puts into knowing the stories, and again, we do the same. Like, when we know somebody's on, we make sure that, you know, that we know who they are, where they come from, what they've done, and the questions reflect it, the conversation reflects it. So, you know, but we're very grateful at the fact that we can look up and there are 1,000 people that want to listen to what we have to say. It's bonkers, man. And that'll never cease to be, you know, humbling and eye-opening. So, you know, we realize that we have to do our best to sort of uphold that every single time we you know, we get on the mic, you know, and try to be as entertaining as possible and informative as possible. And, you know, a big part of that is going out to these shows as well, right? We figured out, hey, you know, initially it was all coming out of our own pockets, going out to, you know, Cog started the whole trend. We're going to E3 and Fan Fest, and managed to get his foot in the door that way. And then, you know, obviously now, you know, we're able to go with the support of the people that support us on Patreon, and obviously on YouTube and stuff like that. We're able to go and provide, you know, coverage like we do, like at PAX. So that's amazing. And to us, that's super important, because you're on the ground, you're talking to the devs right there where, you know, the game probably isn't finished and they're excited to show it off. And then you're meeting the people that get excited about your content. And so it's a special thing that we've been able to do. And, you know, I'm kind of left the gape a little bit, you know, mouth agape a little bit at, you know, kind of where we are now as opposed to where we started. It's always super, just humbling. Can I say again? I've said humbling a million times, but it is true. It's
fine. It is what it is, right?
yeah, it
is what it
absolutely
is.
is what it is. But yeah.
Well, anyways, yeah, let's hit these quick hitter questions. This is going to be no
Sure.
more than 5 minutes because this is already over the damn allotted time, and I knew this was going to happen. God dang, it happens.
The Iron Lord
every time.
effect.
I mean, it's just hard to stop a good conversation. I'm not going to forcibly tell you to shut up. We
Yeah.
need to go to the next conversation. But
Speed it up, like Keely, like speed it up, please.
yeah,
Wrap it up, please. Wrap it up.
Start playing the music. But anyways, so I mean, obviously you guys have had a lot of different talent on your guys' show. You know, you guys not that long ago, I remember listening to, one of the creators of Naughty Dog.
Yes.
On your guys' podcast. And
Jason
you
Momoa,
guys had the likes of like a Jaffe on there and all sorts of different types of people throughout the industry that actually work on or have to do with presenting these games or platforms and stuff like that. And I just have to ask you, out of all the people that you've met, what was probably your favorite or most insightful interview out of all of them?
See, favorite. I can't even. I don't know that I have a favorite because every single one brings a different flavor. Whether it's a
Sure.
dev, an executive, somebody in the creator space.
Let me reframe the question real quick. Then, which one did you feel like you had endless amount of questions for?
It has to be Peter Moore, probably there, right?
Okay,
Peter Moore,
Mr. Sega himself.
Yeah, Mr. Sega himself, Mr. Xbox as well. That was one of like Cog's biggest moments, like him getting Peter. He's such a big Peter fan. But to really hear his story and to see a guy that had been part of so many different aspects of the gaming space and move from company to company and have such an influence at every step of the way, it was just interesting to see somebody that had those differing experiences and for him to be very candid about them. I think that was the biggest thing. I think before we went live with our first interview, which is crazy because it was like in the middle of like a hurricane or something, and he stayed with us. And then right at the end of the show, he's like, "I gotta go." he was driving, to a safer place. But it was just this idea of like right beforehand, I said, "Hey man, is there anything off the table, Peter?" Not really. Just ask away, and I'll tell you in the moment if there's something like I can't get too specific about or whatever the case may be. But it's just the him being candid and him being like, it wasn't like we were talking to an exec. It was just we were talking to a guy who had these amazing experiences, and
it had to be like a full circle moment for you as growing up as a Sega kid and whatnot, and then here you are talking to the person, sure via camera or whatnot, but here you are talking to the person that did all this work in the background for a young Saw.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, right? As somebody by that time, right? Because around the Saturn, I'm already like 20 years old or whatever. So you start understanding the goings-ons of the industry, and it's like, okay, broadly, you think of Peter Moore as the guy that killed that killed Sega, right? The guy that came out and said, "Hey, we're shutting down. We're not making consoles anymore." And that's obviously that was something that was put in his lap that he he's as the boss, this is what he had to do. It wasn't a decision that necessarily came from him fully, but he's the one that had to be the bearer of the bad news. And but it's one of those things, like when you think about what he did in that space to try to really make the Dreamcast a special moment, that cannot be understated. And then what he did, as a showman, right? He has a marketing background, and he was that guy that when he went up there to talk about a product, you believed him. He didn't come off like this, like a smarmy sort of like sales pitch guy.
Nah, man, when he lifted up that sleeve,
yeah,
that was
exactly.
Fierce.
He's a dude that when he talks about something, when he's with a company or with a product, he fully believes in that company and that product, and he's going to, he's going to go out there and do everything he can for that thing to be successful. And you feel that energy from him, even in talking to him all these years later, just sitting down and talking to him over a podcast, you felt it. So that was a special moment for us. And the fact that he came back and did a part 2, and we got to go to his entire history and kind of what his thoughts are on moving forward, if he would ever be willing to jump back in. Interesting stuff, man. And these are opportunities, again, that as a listener, you go back to the point where I was just listening, you never see yourself as having the opportunity to sit with these people and do this stuff.
That's how I felt with Sheamus. I was just like, how did I get here?
Right. And you're talking to the father of Xbox, and how crazy that story is. A lot of these things happen, these situations happen, and you realize that at any point in time when you hear the story, they're very small, minute things that could have happened differently that would have changed the course of history completely. And when
Sheamus came up due to failure.
Exactly. So it's just, it's so interesting to talk to these guys, and it's great because you have the opportunity to bring these guys up to the forefront, so that that fans of gaming, whether they're around your age level or they're younger, whatever, can really have an appreciation for the people that make these games and bring out these consoles that we love. Because end of the day, I think your appreciation grows when you put faces to the product, right? It's real easy for somebody who only cares about the product to just not care about what happens behind the scenes. And to be fair, like, as a consumer, it's fair to just want to engage with stuff on that level. I get, in a lot of ways, that's the expectation. But what gaming has always been different, because gaming is a hobby. In addition to being, at this point, the biggest sort of the biggest vertical of the entertainment industry, it is a hobby. It is kind of it's run by fandom, right? Essentially. Well, the fandom is one of the biggest aspects of it. So yeah, it's different. It's different in that I really do think it is important and imperative that we care about these creators, right? And make sure that we pass that message on to other gamers that may not have that sort of insight. So yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, the Peter Moore thing is big, but again, meeting other creators in the space that after a while you start to get to know, whatever, and then all of a sudden they're sitting on your podcast and you're hearing their stories, that's super special as well, because their stories mirror your stories, right? So yeah, it's what we get to do week in and week out is very special, and it's important that we don't take it for granted.
Okay, well, speaking of and we have 3 more questions just to kind of give you an idea, but talking about something that's special, I want you to tell me your most special moment as an ILP member that you hold, like that you cherish to this day, something that you like when your grandkids coming to ask you, man, what was that moment? If you had to pick one right now, what would be that super duper special, never forget moment that you've had with ILP?
It's I guess my memory is mostly shot, so I'm gonna go with like the nearest one, right? And it has to be, and I'm saying it just because of recency bias, but it is a powerful culminating moment for us that shows us where else we can go. And it was that moment of being on stage at Sacred 300, in New York City, where 3 of the 4 of us are from, to be there with that crowd and to be able to laugh and joke the way that we do, and just be up there and not fold up, and be able to be like, these 3 kids from the Bronx and this kid from West Virginia just got an opportunity to be in front of a crowd, opening up for the biggest, opening up a live show for what is the biggest PlayStation podcast on the planet, and one of the most successful sort of game related, Patreons out there, companies out there. It was really eye-opening. And, for my segment of it, particularly, I did some funny stuff, but at the same time, it was also a way for me to sneak in a little bit of, the history of myself and King and Cog and you know, Attic coming into the fold. I won't spoil what it is, but it was an opportunity to be like, take a moment and reflect and be like, hey, we're here. Look at where we started. And what I mean started is like where we come from, the experiences we've had as young kids growing into young men and adults, and then now you know, getting into this space and then being here and then having people be receptive to what we do and enjoy it. It was a moment, man. It really was, because again, it is that moment that sometimes we don't see coming, but it is that moment of where a lot of things culminate and you're able to step back for a moment and acknowledge what you've accomplished and say, okay, great, this is amazing. I can't believe we're here. But it also opens your eyes to what you're capable of beyond that. So it has to be that, because it was just awesome to be up there on stage with my boys and be like, wow, what the hell?
I mean, it's nuts. You guys went, I mean, you, Cog, and whatnot, y'all went from playing Neo Geo in a department store
Yeah.
to being
Double Dragon at the
ordered to be
laundromat.
live. Yeah, to be
Mhm.
ordered to be live on stage for Sacred Symbols in New York.
Yeah.
Like, that is, dare I say it again, the East Side with the slice of pie. Bruh, I mean, come on, man. Gotta acknowledge that a little bit.
No, 100%, 100%. It's just, it's not for us. It's more about like not seeing it that way. And you know, sometimes again, people's personalities are different, and you know,
Sure, stay humble, right?
yeah, the idea is you stay humble, because we not, obviously there's plenty of people out there, you know, doing their stuff solo, whatever, just you know, really like have hundreds of thousands of followers, and right. And for us, for a while, it was frustrating. It's like, well, why aren't we sort of growing as much as like these other, you know, these other outlets or whatever? And for whatever reason, I think the idea that we're a live podcast on YouTube it's not what YouTube sort of gravitates the most to. But I think what I love about it and what we've come to understand is like, these are literally, you know, almost 22,000 people that really listen to us. It's not people that give you a follow sometimes and just follow and never listen to you ever again, or whatever the case may be.
Sure. Yeah.
We've grown, you know, we've grown that number of sort of people that follow us and support us over the course of now it's going on 7-8 years. So we know that it's genuine, and this idea of having 1,000+ people live listening to you on a Sunday afternoon is a testament to that. And so, yeah, for us, it's about that, constantly being able to grow, constantly seeking out opportunities to be able to talk to, you know, to more people in the industry and get more of an idea, and hopefully at some point be able to affect change in some way in the industry, right? Whether it's you know, being able to get more people that look like us in you know, or be able to be supportive of that in to positions of power in the industry. And you know, there's negativity and there's a lot of BS that shouldn't be part of the space that unfortunately is, and try to do what you can to push back against that and create a space that is truly welcoming for everyone, like for everyone. And that means like allowing people that may have unpopular opinions to say what they got to say, and then respectfully agree to disagree, and you know, have these debates and conversations. I think we've hopefully done a good job of being able of making it clear that that's the space that, you know, that's what we're on. That's the time that we're on. So it is, yeah. So definitely that moment is a big culminating moment that is the one that really sticks out in my mind as a moment that it's easy to step back and reflect on it, because it was like a wow moment for us.
No doubt. Now this is a lot easier and quick of a question for you. What's your favorite studio and what game best represents it?
I don't. Again, I'm so all over the place that it's gonna depend. Like, so I would say the games that have resonated most with me over the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years So Hades has been something that just kind of grabbed me as something that's like everything about this is perfect. It's the gameplay loop, the voice acting. Um, it really jumped out to me as an amazing sort of piece of gaming. Vampire Survivors has been a game again that stuck out to me.
It's a damn drug.
It's a drug. It's a drug. That's why it's an S tier game, Cog. That's why. But okay. People are gonna be like, oh, but this is like the biggest company ever. Whatever. What Rockstar does with both GTA and Red Dead is obviously Rockstar makes money hand over fist. They don't need anybody sort of giving them, extra flowers or whatever the case may be.
They could come out with a console and just have those two games, and they'd be awesome.
Yeah. But Red Dead for me, 1 and 2, have been some of the most special experiences I've had in gaming. They've been games that allowed me to sort of disappear into their worlds in a way that I, up until that point, had never really happened. I've loved games. I've loved series, Mass Effect, and been lost into those games. Assassin's Creed, I'd be lost in those worlds for a long time and, try to 100% those games and things like that. But there was something about Red Dead. And Red Dead, for me, I was so resistant to jumping into it because I'm like, I'm not a cowboy dude. I'm not big into cowboy stories or whatever. It's not for me. And, with Red Dead 1, I didn't play it till it came out in 2010. I didn't play it till, 2012. I was kind of playing it simultaneously with GTA 5. And I kept finding myself gravitating more and more to Red Dead. And it was because it had these quiet moments, when you're kind of in the desert by yourself with your horse and it's just, the sound effects, this, the music in the background, but very low. And you just feel like you're there by yourself and you're inhabiting that world.
You hear that cicada in the background.
Yeah, exactly. You hear all of that and you're like, I'm here. I'm here in a way that I've never felt I've been in a game. And in that feeling in the first one, that was so transformative for me. I was like, wow, I cannot believe that I fronted on this game for so long. But at the same time, I think I got to it when I was ready for it. I may have felt differently about it if I had, forced myself to play it when it came out. So I needed to be receptive to it in order to understand it and in order for it to have the impact that it did on me. And the same came with 2. With 2, obviously, I loved the first one. I had expectations going into the second one, and they were completely blown away because what they did was, and for a lot of people, this is something they didn't like about it, is that they gamified a lot of minutia of life, right? And so a lot of people who go into a game for it to play a certain way and be a game, this was more like a cowboy simulator than a game in a lot of ways. And again, it allowed me to disappear into that world and those characters and sort of inhabit the world in a way that no game had done for me up until that point, even the first one, and hasn't done for me since. And I love a whole lot of games.
The game.
Yeah. So again, it's Rockstar. They're a huge company that makes money hand over fist, but they get called out for crunch and taking 10 years to make a game, but the end product shows it. And I can't deny that stuff really just, it transports me to another world.
All right, and then my last question for you this now evening. What frustrates you about gaming, and then also what would be a dream come true to you in gaming? So that's like a 2-part question. Answer it as you please.
So what frustrates me about gaming, I think, is what we talked about before, is this idea that a lot of times the games don't get a chance to shine because they get, they get overrun by the console warring and the conversation. And again, like I said, X, Twitter, or whatever, can become an echo chamber, and you think that the rhetoric kind of extends beyond that, and it's not necessarily the case. But it bothers me that those conversations even happen, you know, and sometimes they happen very disingenuously, where it's just people trying to get clicks and stuff like that. I'm like, why is anybody's bandwidth being taken up with this? Because it has real repercussions and ramifications where games that should be, you know, on everybody's radar are not getting the love that they deserve because it's being overshadowed by some, you know, some console warring stuff, or then or some technical stuff where we start arguing about, you know, the frame rate of this, the resolution of this, and the puddle. Yeah, you know, thank goodness it was Spider-Man. The Spider-Man, you can argue about the Spider-Man puddle every day, you know, all you want. At the end of the day, Spider-Man's gonna be able to get over that, you know. Whereas, you know, if you're arguing about the same puddle in a game, you know, in a first sort of attempt by a brand new studio at doing something cool, and the puddle becomes the narrative that turns into people not wanting to play the game, it's a sad thing. So I think, to me, that's one of the things that frustrates me the most about, you know, gaming now, is that a lot of disingenuous arguments around certain things that don't put you know, the game and the quality of the game at the forefront, and, you know, end up ultimately hurting the success of games. And, you know, and all of that has a knock-on effect where, you know, a game isn't successful, doesn't do what it's supposed to do, they don't make any sequels, you know, studios get shut down, and we get into this sort of vicious cycle that I don't want to see happening. If it's going to happen, I want it to happen for real reasons, not because of, you know, crazy narratives that get out of control that really don't have any bearing on whether the game is good or not. So that's the most frustrating thing to me. And to me, a dream scenario is, and we're starting to see it, and hopefully it really does come to fruition. As a Sega kid, Sega has a lot of old IP that I think can translate very well to modern gaming. Whether it is, you know, going back and doing remakes of the classic games, reimagining them in some way, shape, or form, or even taking them and modernizing them and creating modern versions of, you know, what does a modern, you know, I'm excited to see Golden Axe, right? We saw a little bit of that. It's kind of 3D now, and what does that mean? You know, seeing what they do to modernize Shinobi, and, you know, and Crazy Taxi, and Jet Set, things like that. So as a Sega kid, they have so much more that they can sort of glean from. My hope is that they go back into those chests and really, you know, bring back some of that stuff and find cool ways to introduce it to modern audiences, appeal to the people that love those franchises from back then, but also find a way to move forward with them and make them relevant in this day and age. That would be amazing, because we see too many times that companies don't care so much about their history sometimes, and when it comes to even the game preservation stuff or whatnot. But then you have moments that, you know, where they take a character that was, you know, prominent in an earlier generation of console or whatever, and they find a way to bring it to the masses in a modern way that, you know, kind of recontextualizes them and makes them relevant again. So I would love for, you know, the entire Sega lineup to have that moment where we have a brand new Phantasy Star, you know, but not, you know, not necessarily an online thing, but a true Phantasy Star RPG.
Get that Shenmue back, man.
Yeah, get Shenmue back, and obviously taking the lessons learned from a Yakuza, and be like, okay, we could let's find a middle ground here that's going to be appealing to the modern gamer. You know, Panzer Dragoon, you know, come back and make if you come back and remake Panzer Dragoon Saga, and with all the modern bells and whistles, maybe that, you know, that popularizes it in a way that, you know, you see more of them, right? So stuff like that's a dream moment for me if that were to happen. So
no doubt. Well, we have finally reached the end of the show, and I mean, I try to tell you, I ain't trying to make this 3 hours on you, bro, but we done about
we're here.
Yeah, we're here now, and what are we gonna do? But anyways, thank you so much for setting aside this time for your boy Ham Solo. It was a phenomenal time meeting you in person, being able to shake hands, dap, all that good stuff, chat, and whatever, and finally be able to set up a time to be able to have you here today to talk about your history and kind of go through how you got to where you are, how you kind of think about the way that, you know, gaming is adjusting for the future and whatnot. And we got to hear some really dope stuff from you today here, Sav. What I'd like you to do for me real quick is just let everybody know where they can find you.
Oh yeah, first off, well, thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I know it's a real pain in the rear to try to track me down. It's just my schedule is really bonkers. In addition to you, that there are a few other people that I owe podcast appearances to, because again, and I appreciate the fact that anybody just hits me up, says, "Hey man, I'd love to have you on my show," and I would love it for this to be my job, but that's the goal, right? That's the hope that, you know, one day that could be the case. But thank you so much for having me, man. I love having these conversations. I love, you know, being able to talk about the history, you know, our history as a podcast, myself, and just our history with gaming, and talk about the industry, because it's what we love, man. And the fact that it's still here for us to you know, there were points that when I was young, you know, the Atari crash, whatever, it's like, okay, this gaming thing is done. And, you know, then Nintendo brought it back, and the rest is history, so to speak. So I love the fact that we can do this. So thank you for having me. But you can find me, Lord Sav ILP on Twitter. We will see. You can reach me there. You won't see me posting that much, but you know, you can reach me there most definitely. And of course, you know, Iron Lords podcast every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time right here on YouTube. So tomorrow's going to be a fun day with my bros. Hopefully get my voice back, because I lost it a little bit today. We'll see. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, man. And lordsofgaming.net. To find Ham there, you know, doing great work along with the rest of the guys over at Lognet. And yeah, man, it's upwards and onwards is kind of the mantra, right? Always trying to grow, trying to learn new things, and get out there. So
no doubt. Well, before we leave here, I gotta ask you, how would you describe gaming in just 3 words?
Transformative. Love. Frustrating. All those things.
All right, so transformative, love, and frustrating. And there we have it, you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining your boy Ham Solo here on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. You guys know what to do. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this a ton. Please go on ahead. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more, I definitely have about 2 months set already of other guests that are going to be coming on here. That includes folks like Snowbike Mike,
Nice.
Ralph, that used to be the PR guy for Xbox between 2012 and 2023, and I got a few developers. One of them from Dune, the movie, but you know, he's helping to work on the video game. And I got another brother that like I was telling you earlier, that did Big Boy Boxing, that's going to be coming through here.
Oh, nice. Love that game.
Well, I might have told that to Cog and everybody earlier on the meeting, and I'm getting it mixed up now. But yeah, make sure you guys come through, hit that subscribe button if you guys want to be ready for those interviews as they come out later on in the next month or two. But thank you guys so much for coming here. This is your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming signing out from TSWS Gaming, letting y'all know to keep it gaming or keep it moving. Y'all have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Peace out.
Peace.